Carrie, you all set?
Yep, all set, ready to go.
Fantastic. Okay. Calling this meeting of the Boston City Council's Ways and Means Committee to order. My name is Kenzie Bach. I'm the District 8 City Councilor and the Chair of the Committee on Ways and Means. This public hearing is being recorded and live streamed at boston.gov/city-council-tv. It will be rebroadcast on Comcast Channel 8, RCN Channel 82, and Verizon Channel 1964. We're having a 27 hearing, 6-week budget review process. Obviously, we're doing it on Zoom given the pandemic, but it's still as important a time as ever to scrutinize the city budget and think about how we're going to marshal our resources to meet the challenges ahead. We strongly encourage residents to take a moment to engage in this process. So there's a number of ways you can do that. One is to give testimony for the record at a hearing. So for a hearing like this one, you can join via the Zoom link, which is on the public notice, and then wait until the end of the hearing and testify. We just ask everyone to speak for 2 to 3 minutes max and identify yourself so we can hear all questions and comments. You can also come to one of our 2 remaining dedicated public testimony hearings. So there will be one on May 26th at 6 p.m. focused on BPS, and one on May 28th at 6 p.m. focused on the other departments. Or you can email the committee at ccc.wm@boston.gov or fill out the form on our website, which is at boston.gov/council-FY21Budget. At that form, you can also record a video, which we'll play at the end of public testimony for the relevant hearing. And you can also informally tweet us your questions using the hashtag #BOSBudget, so BOSS budget. We really do want your participation in this decision-making process about how the city's money should be spent. So today's hearing is on Dockets 0588 to 0590, orders for the FY21 operating budget, including annual appropriations for departmental operations, for the school department, and for other post-employment benefits. Dockets 0591 to 0592, orders for capital fund transfer appropriations, and dockets 0593 to 0596, orders for the capital budget, including loan orders and lease purchase agreements. Collectively, those dockets make up the city's proposed FY21 budget from the mayor. There's also a docket 0603, which is an order authorizing a limit for the Parks Department revolving fund, and docket 0597, an order for an appropriation from the income of the George Francis Parkman fund. So those are 2 funds administered by the Parks Department that are also up for consideration today. So our hearing today is focused on the Parks and Recreation Department. And as I said, on that Parks Revolving Fund, which is related to animal care and control, and the Parkman Fund. And we're lucky to be joined today by Chief Cook, who's 3 for 3 on the day for hearings. And then Commissioner Woods, who's our Commissioner of Parks and Recreation in the city of Boston. We're also joined by Josue Altador, the Director of Maintenance at Parks and Recreation, by Diane Belfast, Director of HR, Stephanie McManus, Director of Finance, and Liza Meyer, Chief Landscape Architect for Parks and Rec. So we're looking forward to hearing from the whole team. And without further ado, I will turn it over to Chief Cook and his team. All right, Chief Cook, you're muted. 3 for 3, but not yet a pro.
Is that better, Counselor?
Yes, it's great to be able to hear you.
Thank you very much. It was really not worth unmuting me because I'm just going to say, in deference to your questions, I'm going to let Commissioner Woods begin with opening statements.
Thank you, the good chief, as well as Madam Chair. Good afternoon. My name is Ryan Woods, and I am proud to serve as the Commissioner of the Boston Parks and Recreation Department. Although this is my first year attending this hearing as the Commissioner, I've had the pleasure of serving the residents and working with the Boston Parks Department team for the past 14 years. Joining me as Madam said, I have our Chief Landscape Architect, Liza Meyer, our Director of Finance, Stephanie McManus, Diane Belfast, who oversees our Human Resources Division, and our Director of Maintenance, Josh Altador. So I'd first like to thank the Council for their support of our department. The department is more inclusive and accessible because of the Council's support and leadership. So we'd like to thank you for your past support, and we look forward to working together in this upcoming fiscal year. Our department focuses on 3 main areas: access, equity, and excellence. Access: under Mayor Walsh's leadership, we ensure that all Boston residents are within a 10-minute walk from their front door to their nearest park. We are the 2nd city in the United States to claim this honor, or as we like to boast, the first one on the East Coast with this delineation. Equity: in our investment maintenance services, and renovation of capital projects throughout the city. In excellence, we strive to not only have the best park system, but one that leads in design and climate adaptation goals. I would like to add a fourth pillar to our list this year, and that's adaptability. So we've had to adapt to the needs of our residents in each community, adapt to our ever-changing climate, and during this new pandemic, we certainly are adapting to the way we engage with residents and provide safe and welcoming spaces for all Boston residents and visitors to enjoy. I'd like to take a moment to thank the hardworking men and women of the Boston Parks and Recreation Department, especially during this time. Our staff continues to work whether remotely or in the field, making sure our parks continue to be designed, cleaned, maintained, are planted, and remain safe. I'd like to especially call out our attention to the maintenance staff who've been working daily to sanitize parks and make sure they're clean, our animal care and control division that respond to animal emergencies and daily operate our animal shelter, our park rangers that ensure park rules are enforced and that park users are safe, and specifically our cemetery staff. The men and women of the Boston Parks Department cemetery staff have been working around the clock to prepare graves and ensure each burial is performed with utmost respect. This division usually averages 35 burials a month, and it looks like this month we're likely to hit 100 alone. We're very proud of our staff, their willingness to set up and work through this crisis to ensure park operations continue. And our parks have been busy and have been a place residents get to go outside in a socially distant manner. As you know, parks provide a connection to nature, which helps reduce stress levels and improve mental health. And our parks have remained an essential place during this COVID crisis. I'd like to share with you some of our highlights from this past fiscal year. We've had a successful transition of the Animal Care and Control Division from inspectional services to parks, which includes the establishment of a nonprofit fund for animal care. For the first time, our Animal Care and Control Division will be able to accept donations. 8 new seasonal rangers just this past week completed their training and are now out in the parks serving as goodwill ambassadors, answering questions and enforcing park ordinances. In terms of design and construction, it's been a very busy year for us until this spring, where we were able to complete capital projects at Jamaica Pond, Smithfield, Noyes, Olmsted, Hobart, Parkman, Reservation Road, and Cassidy. We began construction at Flaherty in South Boston, Downer Ave, Langone Popolo, Dorchester Park, Bedford Evans, Stonehill Playground, Amatucci Playground, Holborn Playground, Lambert Playground, Harambee and Garvey Park. And we're in the process of a contract execution for Mary Hannon Playground in Orton Field in South Boston, as well as Clapham Square. We awarded jointly with the DCR, the Town of Brookline, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers a $36.5 million construction project for the second phase of the Muddy River. And we're partnering with the U.S. Park Service to complete the restoration project on Boston Common for the Robert Gould Shaw 54th Regiment Memorial. As soon as construction allows, we'll be doing test borings and an archaeological dig on Boston Common in preparation for the King Memorial. We kicked off master plans at Franklin Park, Boston Common, and Moakley Park. And we just started with our Boston Parks parcel priority plan, which I know you heard a little bit about in the environment hearing this morning. We procured our first 2 recycling packer trucks to expand recycling in our parks and to educate residents on the importance of recycling in our park system. We had 72,000 residents take part in arts, cultural, and recreational programs that were offered just by our department. And we issued just over 3,500 permits for weddings, athletics, and special events. In our cemeteries, we buried over 496 residents. And we installed new roadways and historic signage. I know Council Braden was very interested at Evergreen Cemetery, so we're happy with the work that was done there. We began work to create more dedicated veterans burial areas as well as indigent graves for our residents. And our horticulture team planted over 30,000 plants and flowers, had 60 dedicated sites citywide that they maintained, and planted 55,000 bulbs throughout the city. And we're seeing the fruits of their labor this spring, certainly, when we need some hope and some color in this world. For fiscal year 21, some new initiatives and things I'd like to quickly highlight. This proposed budget is a 3.9% increase in operating funds over fiscal year 20, which is an increase of about $1 million to our operating. It includes 6 new positions, 4 of which are in maintenance, 1 with Urban Wilds, and 1 in our urban forestry program. We hope to utilize anticipated funding for a second maintenance shift to be based out of Franklin Park, which will help reduce overtime costs, decrease response time to off-hour maintenance issues and emergencies, and respond to the COVID-related issues in our parks, needle cleanup, et cetera. This would be a shift that works Wednesday through Sunday from 1 to 9. So instead of our regular Monday through Friday operations, we'll be able to expand when the parks are busiest to help respond to some of these issues. We're going to better maintain our urban wilds through the hiring of a dedicated gardener foreperson, which is funded in this recommended budget. Urban Wilds is a program that's been largely dependent on volunteer groups, and after this spring, we certainly lost a lot of volunteer cleanups that were scheduled. We hope to create an urban forestry master plan to better understand the areas of potential improvement in our current urban tree canopy and onboard more staff to better maintain the canopy and address tree mortality, oversee warranty issues, and quickly respond to down tree emergencies. We're excited that we'll be able to plant 2,000 trees in fiscal year 21, doubling our current volume, which is $1 million increase in capital over this past fiscal year 20. And there's new funding in place for safety servicing in playgrounds. We're going to continue to effectively have community outreach and engagements around our master plans and our community-centered park renovation projects. We're very excited about the Back Bay Fens Pathway Rehab Project to improve accessibility and site conditions and really add on to our historic amount of investment in our historic parks. There's funding to continue phase 2 and design of phase 3 for Harambee Park, right in Franklin Field area. And we're looking forward to moving forward with design services for Malcolm X, Crawford Street, Mother's Rest, Edna Bino and Orchard Garden, Millennium Park, and Ryan Play area. A lot of this work is being done by our staff, but it would not be possible without our 161 friends groups throughout the city. We really owe a debt of gratitude to our advocates that, as well as advocating for each of their individual locations, they come together to form the Boston Park Advocates to help guide us, keep us on our toes, and make sure we're moving our park system forward. So this is an exciting proposed budget for us. We're looking forward to making these improvements. And with that, I'd like to open it for any questions that the council may have.
Great. Thank you so much, Commissioner Woods. An exciting set of things to talk about. I want to acknowledge my colleagues who have joined us. So Councillor Ed Flynn from District 2, Councillor Liz Breeden, District 9, Councillor Matt O'Malley from District 6, Councillor Kim Janey from District 7 and Council President, Councillor Frank Baker from District 3, Councillor Anissa Asabi George at large, and Councillor Andrea Campbell from District 4, along with Councillor Julia Mejia, also at large. So we'll jump right into questions. I suspect the Parks team was watching the environment hearing this morning, but just in case, just so that everyone knows, after 5 minutes, will raise my gavel like this, and then there's another 2-minute grace period, and then my phone alarm will go off. If a member of the administration staff is speaking, feel free to finish your thought, but just know that we're trying to move along. And I know this is a challenge because, counselors have so many questions about our parks. I think you saw that in the questions that we sent over from our working session, and want to thank Parks for looking at those. I know that you're coming to this prepared to address many of them. I would just say to counselors that I would really encourage to the maximum degree possible for people to ask a question and let it be answered and then ask another question. Because I think we've been running into a little bit of a challenge where folks ask 5 minutes of questions and then there just isn't enough time to get to the answers to them. So that would be my gentle suggestion from the chair. I will reserve my questions to the end. I will first recognize Councillor Ed Flynn, and then I'll put the rest of the order in the chat. Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Councillor Balk, and thank you to Commissioner Woods and Chief Cook and the Parks team for excellent work. We have a lot of dedicated professional city employees that work there. I want to say thank you to those individuals. We're proud of you. Commissioner, Moakley Park certainly is getting a lot of funding for major renovations. I played ball there. I got a lot of requests, as you know, over the last several years, just from people that are involved in the sports program, just to make sure that we know that sports and athletic participation is a top priority for them.
Yes, it is. And I was glad that I was able to meet with some of the leaders of these sports programs a few months ago, set up by Haley Dillon, so we could hear their concerns and show the vision plan that came out from Moakley, but specifically talk through it, that these were just holding places, and we're able to work jointly together and have robust community meetings as we phase this project out. So we heard it loud and clear that people wanted to make sure that the track stayed down by the K Circle side, just so they have T access, and make sure that the Babe Ruth fields stayed down closer to Preble Circle side. And we made those adjustments, and we'll be coming forward with the community with that. But I just wanted to stress that it is just the start of a vision plan, and we will be going into phase projects. We will be having a robust community conversation, so nothing is designed completely right now. We're going into an open process.
Thank you, Commissioner. I was at my favorite park in the city yesterday with Brian Bishop from the Veterans Department. We were at Medal of Honor Park yesterday, and looks beautiful up there. What's the latest in terms of our planning for Medal of Honor Park, especially with the children's play area?
Yes, so we are working along with Collins Joy Project and some residents on adding more 2 to 5 play elements in the Medal of Honor play area up top there. And that was something we heard loud and clear, and the mayor heard loud and clear when we went out to the community, that it was the playground was a nice design, but it focused more on the 5 to 12-year-old age group, and there wasn't enough there for younger kids. So we were able to have a meeting at the Boys and Girls Club and garner all these ideas from kids, and it's a creative meeting. They all got to come in and start with their own pirate name that they gave themselves on their name tag. Very engaging with the kids to hear what they wanted to hear. Oftentimes we hear from parents, but not with the kids. So that project will be starting. I'm looking at the exact when we have it on here. They'll be going out to bid this summer, so it should be going into construction during the fall.
I want to say thank you to the parks for investing in Orton Park that desperately needs fixing up. So I want to say thank you for that commitment. How are we doing with Peters Park in the South End, Commissioner?
So Peters Park in the South End is getting some of their CPA funding as soon as we can start construction, some of those projects, which has to do with batting cages, some shade structures over the benches that the community asked for, with the support of the council was granted. So that construction is starting. And then additionally in this proposed budget, we have work on the ball field. So Peters Park has been we've done piece by piece over different phases, but now we can there's funding in this proposed budget to actually do some work on the ball fields.
Yeah, they have one of the best youth baseball programs in the city. So thank you to the mayor for his investment in Peters Park. Also, I know the ongoing master plan at the Boston Common, the public garden is going well. It's great to work with the Friends group there. What's the latest on the Boston Common? I'm also, I just want to make sure it's always a safe place for residents, for tourists that want to visit, for families. What's the latest as it addresses safety concerns?
Sure. So I think we're very excited that we just garnered 8 new positions, 8 new seasonal park rangers that started this past week or so. So we're going to see more enforcement out there. There is more police presence on the Common, a permanent presence that Captain Fong has out there on the Common. So we can work with that. And I think we're coming up with some exciting ideas throughout the master plan of camera locations and safety plans and how we go about that. Liza, do you want to add anything more specifically on the master plan?
Sure. I guess I would also add another aspect of safety is being able to get to and from the park safely. And I'll just add that we're coordinating with the transportation department on their project looking at the streets in this Back Bay downtown neighborhood and looking for ways to make those pedestrian crossings safer, expand bicycle infrastructure, and make this a more walkable, bikeable part of the city. So that's their project, but how it relates to the Boston Common and obviously the adjacent public garden and ComAv Mall are really important aspects of that work.
Thank you, Liza. And I guess my final point, I want to ask a question, but I love the Boston Common. I share it with Kenzie Bach. I love the public garden. I just want to make sure that transportation-wise or pedestrian safety-wise, I want to see kind of a better connection from Chinatown to the Boston Common or Chinatown to the public garden. Just making sure pedestrian safety is important especially for the elderly residents that want to get from Chinatown to the Boston Common. I see them in the morning, especially the senior citizens. They're doing their exercise and they really enjoy the park. They love the park. They just ask me if there's a better way for them to walk from Chinatown into Boston Common because pedestrian safety is a concern. So it's probably a collaboration of transportation, police, and the parks as well, something I've talked to Commissioner Woods and Chief Cook about too.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you. Is that my time, Council?
That is. You have about 30 seconds of grace period left, but we're
Okay, I might as well use it up. I just want to say again, thank you to the dedicated and professional staff at the Public Parks and Recreation, and we appreciate everything you do. You're unsung heroes in our city, and we notice everything that our parks are in great condition because of our dedicated employees. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Councillor Flynn, and for your shared advocacy on the front of making it safe for people to visit the Common and the Public Garden.
And friends in the Bay Village as well, Councilor Buck.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Really important. All right, I want to recognize now, there went the time. Next up is Councillor Breeden, and then it'll be Councillor O'Malley. Councillor Breeden.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Parks, an issue that's near and dear to my heart. I had a question about, are there any plans to have a dog park at the Smith Field in their phase 2? We probably have more dogs in the neighbourhood than children at this point. So a dog park we don't have a dog park, an official dog park anywhere in the neighbourhood. So is there any plans for a dog park at Smith Field?
There is, Councillor. We heard that loud and clear as well. I think going in, it was mostly just athletic fields, baseball and softball diamonds, mostly as phase 2. And we heard loud and clear. So there was design added for a dog recreation space in phase 2 of Smith.
That's a nice way to put it. Dog recreation space. Excellent. Oh yeah, so the Chandler Pond, Friends of the Chandler Pond Park over there on Lakeshore Road have reformulated and become active again. They were trying to get some money from the CPA, but they said that they have to have a scoping process. And so is the scoping, how long does that take? And is that on the list of projects that we should be looking at? It's really, it's a very active group of friends that have been cleaning the pond and picking up litter and planting memorial trees for folks. And, you know, it's just the scoping part of it, it seems to be what's holding them up in their application for CPA support.
Yes, I was very grateful to be able to go out and meet with the Friends of Chandler Pond last August and took a walk, and they toured me around all their favorite spots to show some elements. So we came up with some creative thoughts. We oftentimes have some arborists or tree companies offering donated services. So we're looking into that to see if there can be some tree work that is done in the park for the Friends that can be done. In addition to that, we are working on the scope. It was more a staffing issue that the person who oversees our urban wilds is Paul Sutton. He has that on his plate and will be working on that. And I think in this proposed budget, we're adding a second position to the urban wilds division, which will alleviate some of his responsibilities and let him be able to focus more on the scoping work.
Very good, thank you. I look forward to that, making progress on that issue. I had an inquiry about pickleball. I didn't know there was such a thing as pickleball until this week. Some of our elders in the neighborhood would like to be able to access the recreational space on tennis courts to play pickleball, and I don't know if that is on your agenda in the city.
It is. So every time we now do a renovation or resurfacing of our tennis courts, we are adding the lines for pickleball. So it is done on the same court as a tennis court. It's just different dimensions with the lines. So we're adding those in, and I'm very proud to report the first ones in your district are at Cassidy that are already completed. So when that opens this spring, you will have 2 of the finest pickleball courts in the city at Cassidy Field.
Good. I better get my paddle ready then and get out there. Let's see. Ringer Park, it's sort of in need of a lot of work. Are there the master plan? I just wanted an update on the Ringer Park master plan.
Sure. I'm going to ask my colleague, Chief Landscape Architect Liza Meyer, who's more on top of that, to reply.
Hello. Yes, so the Ringer Park Master Plan is one of the projects that's in a request for qualifications that is out for designer responses right now. So we expect all those responses actually due back to us tomorrow. And then we'll be able to review the potential designer pool and make selections and start those projects. So Ringer Park is on that list. There's a big group of projects on that list, and we'll engage with the Friends of Ringer Park and the design team all together to prioritize investments, identify needs, and scope phasing for making improvements in that property in the years to come.
Very good. The other thing we have, as you mentioned, we have a wonderful Civil War era cemetery in our neighborhood, the Evergreen Cemetery. At the very back end, there's some underutilized sort of areas that have a lot of old trees and things. I was wondering, in terms of our tree canopy, is there any scope there to look at developing, not necessarily making it into burial ground, but to just enhance it with replanting of new trees and just making it a bit more, and maybe opening it up for walking or something like that at the back end of the Evergreen Cemetery?
Yes, we're happy to look into that, and we're always looking for ways to grow our tree canopy, and cemeteries are a great location for that. We're seeing a lot of active walkers, more so now than in the past in there, and just had some great renovations with new historic signage that was added to complete the signage. I think we had some mismatched signage on some of the roads and pathways in there, so we were able just to complete that the beginning of this year and do a lot of pathway work. So I think we're putting a lot of attention right now into Evergreen, and I think moving forward with adding more trees and looking at the canopy is a great way to move forward.
Very good. Okay, thank you so much for all your work. I really appreciate it, and I'll not take any more time. I know there's many other councillors with questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you so much, Councillor Breeden. Next up is Councillor O'Malley, and then it'll be Councillor Janey. Councillor O'Malley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commish, to your team, thank you for really exceptional service, particularly now. We know how important our parks are in good times, but amidst pandemic, they've really been a safe haven for folks to get out there, and you and your team have been just remarkable, making sure we're able to support the excess capacity and doing what we can to make sure people are safe. My only criticism of you, Commissioner, is that you didn't bring your beautiful 2-week-old baby to help participate in this Zoom call. So hopefully you can rectify that for the next round of questions. But congratulations to you and Lauren on a beautiful addition to your family.
Thank you. Hopefully I don't show the 3 hours of sleep I had last night.
Not at all. Speaking of families, I'm going to begin my line of questioning by talking about the wonderful fact that West Roxbury has seen a 16% increase in school-aged children over the last 10 years. This is according to a study released by the Boston Foundation. And we are enormously appreciative of the great open space in Parkman that we have in West Roxbury, all throughout District 6, but I'm going to talk specifically about West Roxbury for this first round in one particular field, and that's Billings Field. As a kid growing up, I loved playing at Billings Field. I can remember the wooden structures on the playground. Chief Cook may remember as well, and perhaps some older folks on this call. And we haven't seen really any significant investment in Billings Field itself. Now, the tot lot in the playground named after firefighter Kennedy and Lieutenant Ed Walsh is something that we really value and appreciate. I'm talking specifically about the field itself. Billings Field is essentially the front yard of West Roxbury. There are countless leagues that play there: Pop Warner, Parkway Girls Softball, the Babe Ruth League, Parkway Little League. It's the site of so many incredible events, the Parks Department music concert series in the summer, the Corb Road Race, which has essentially become West Roxbury's days. So much happens at Billings Field. And through no one's fault other than some benign neglect through the years, we haven't seen the investment that it needs. So my number one capital request going forward this year is making sure that we can actually fulfill the potential of Billings Field, making sure that we have some resources to help support the countless, the tens of thousands of kids and adults and seniors who use it. Again, it's become essentially West Roxbury's front yard. So I guess to begin, Commissioner or Chief, I've been talking about this for a while. There's some great support. Is there any comments, you can suggest as it relates to Billings, as it relates to the city really investing in this place that truly needs it?
Sure. I think this is definitely a priority investment area for us. We see that it's heavy use, specifically for all the things you've mentioned. I know Parkway in Motion has been a fierce supporter of this as well and has called us many times on it. There's poor drainage. The field needs work. Chief Cook, will be able to tell you that he sprained his own ankle at the park last week while walking his dog out there. So that is even more proof of work that's needed there. Special electrical upgrades as well to the lighting fixtures that are out there. So it's definitely needed and is something that we hope to prioritize as we move forward. But Chief, do you have anything specific?
No, I would agree with you, Councillor. It holds a central place in the activity and the vibrancy of the neighborhood of West Roxbury. And selfishly, it's where I start and end my days. Sprained ankles notwithstanding. That being said, it's a big park project, and there's a healthy capital parks department plan right now, and so making sure that we don't approach it from a piecemeal fashion, but when we can get around to it in the capital plan, I think it's due for a major review of master plan. And one thing I want to shout out, just a call back to Liz Breeden's comments. There's an amazing urban wild aspect to Billings that you don't even realize because there's so many invasive plants and invasive trees up in the hillside. So there's a real opportunity to expand our healthy tree canopy in West Roxbury there as well.
No, that's terrific. And again, that you inadvertently brought up a point that I neglected to. In addition to the incredible youth sports, the seniors that participate, that walk around that expansive fields in the urban wilds, there's actually a group of nearby residents who organize a monthly cleanup, and I've been out there with them helping to clean it up. So it's just really has been the center of activities. I'm delighted to hear comments from both gentlemen about the shared fervent belief that this is something that we need to act on, and we will act on it. And I'll just continue to urge you to let's act as expeditiously and with great rapidity as we humanly can, because this is a great priority, I know, for all of us, and the potential there. I just don't want to see it lost, particularly in a time when we're seeing such record-setting use of our parks. This is a great opportunity, so I appreciate your comments on that. Shifting gears a little bit, I want to talk about the Urban Forest Master Plan. I am delighted about this. This is something that Chief Cook, when you had the commissioner's job, we were able to secure money for the LIDAR study of our canopy. This is something that is so important. Does the master plan include only the city's tree, or will it include the entire tree canopy as well?
Yeah, very briefly, I'm going to defer to Ryan and Liza to get into the specifics, but the answer is yes. It'll include all the trees in the city. So go ahead, Commissioner.
Sure. I was going to say, so with the urban forestry tree master plan, it's going to help solve the social inequities. It's going to adopt new rules and regulations, provide more protection, really help us on these older trees that have the largest canopy, but also look at rules and regulations and way we can incorporate that around trees on private land. A lot of these larger trees that have this larger canopy are not under our control or our protection, and we want to specifically look at that in ways that we can get involved, have a robust community process around this, and really work on a preservation strategy.
Great, thank you. And, has there been any sort of more talk as it relates to development and coming up with some sort of a formula? So, if a development were to cost 12 mature trees, that then 20 or the equivalent investment of 20 trees would have to be elsewhere. Has there been any talk, this is somewhat off topic in terms of the budget, but just in terms of process and priorities going forward to grow our tree canopy, to sort of address that, trees that we lose through sort of normal development?
There hasn't been, Councillor, but that would be one of the strategic goals of the Urban Forestry Master Plan, is to look at what potential rules and regulations we could have for offsets, or what we really want to incentivize is tree protection.
Yeah, okay, fair point. That's it for this round, but I'll just close by saying, again, kudos also to Tommy Sullivan and the crew that work in the city cemetery. When you think of just the enormity of the crisis that we are up against, to think of those brave men and women who work in that incredibly challenging job, to see a tripling or more of their workload really speaks to the severity of what we're up against. I'm grateful for all park employees, but a special shout out to the folks who work in the cemeteries division. I'll be back for round 2 on park rangers and park maintenance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Malley. Next up is Council President Janey, and then it'll be Councillor Baker. Councillor Janey?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Hear you great.
Wonderful. I want to say thank you to Chief Cook and his amazing team. I'm really grateful for the work that you do. This is an exciting time for me, just like with the CPA hearings. I really like digging in deep in terms of our parks. And so just want to thank you for the work, and certainly want to shout out the folks that help keep the District 7 parks clean and wonderful, and we've got many. And I'm also very proud that we have so much green space in District 7. For me, I'd just like to get updated on some of the projects in my district. So there are several parks that are either in a design phase or scheduled to go under construction, and was hoping for an update, particularly given the pause in construction and how COVID might be delaying some of the projects. I know the ones that are in design phase, hopefully those are moving forward, but just hoping you can give an update, specifically Malcolm X Park, Crawford Street, and Jeep Jones and Winthrop.
Sure, I'll just start, and then my colleague Liza Meyer is going to give the exact specifics on those. I want to just
Thank you so much, Commissioner. Good to see you.
You too. Thank you, Councillor. We're very excited to, as soon as construction will allow, add on to that Lambert Ave, which will be one of our playgrounds that will be opening in Roxbury in the next 4 to 6 weeks once construction resumes. So I want to add on to that. And I want to personally thank your staff for being so engaging with us on the Malcolm X plan. We do have a meeting already on the books. We have one on the books prior to the COVID crisis, and we're happy to get a virtual meeting going. And we're seeing a lot of responses come in on the survey that was specifically out there for Malcolm X Park. So Liza will give specifics on that. And I just want to shout out on Winthrop. You brought Winthrop to our attention last year at the hearing and made us go out there. And we were able to meet with Stanley and some other residents that live on the street that run the basketball program there, and really get to walk the park and engage them. So because of your advocacy and bringing that to our attention, we're happy that not only are we working on a court renovation now in this proposed budget, there is a renovation for the play lot, exercise equipment, and pretty much every other feature in the park. So thank you for that. And Liza, if you want to get on the specifics on the timelines.
Yeah, sure. So the project on that list that's under construction is the DeWitt Madison Park project that is underway now. Obviously, there's a hold on the construction currently, but as soon as they can resume work, there's another 8 to 12 weeks of construction out there. So we should see that open at some point this summer. That will be the first one open. And then Crawford, Jeep Jones, and well, you didn't mention Walnut Park, which is across the street from Crawford, but it too is part of our current RFQ. So we'll be hiring designers for those projects in the coming months, and then start the community engagement and design process this year for those.
And that's really good to hear. I appreciate that, because I think there had been at some point in the process, perhaps on the Malcolm X project, that I think there were selections that were taking place without an RFP. And so I would like to kind of understand when a project requires an RFP, when it doesn't. And in our minds, you know, we think that there is an opportunity there to not only engage residents through a design phase, but clearly maybe folks who are small business owners who then could contract with the city to help with the design. So I'd be interested in understanding when we do the RFPs or the RFQs and when we don't, if you could maybe add some context.
Sure. So we, more often than not, vastly more often than not, we go through an RFQ or RFP process for designer selection. Within that process, we also let designers know that we will sometimes hire without doing an RFQ if a project comes up and we want to get it started right away, because the designer selection process through the RFP process can take several months. So by collecting their qualifications, we can review those qualifications outside of the original timeline and still make a selection of a designer who's qualified to take on that project so that we can get it started sooner. That was the case with Malcolm X, but now we're in the process of hiring designers for 24 projects. So we'll be quite busy in the months ahead getting all of those projects going.
Yep. I'd love to hear about the Franklin Park master plan and where we are in that process. I will have additional questions for the next round in terms of contracting and procurement and diversity goals for construction. But if we could, for this round, just get an update on the master plan and where we are with Franklin Park, that would be great.
Sure. So the master plan for Franklin Park started. We were able to have a community meeting. We were so grateful to see that the room almost had 300 participants in it, engaged in that first open dialogue. We had over 4,000 people, or even more than that, I think now, take part in the survey for Franklin Park. And we're really seeing that instead of just pulling in residents from one neighborhood, I think it was heavy JP at one time, we're now seeing that we're getting more community groups engaged, more civic associations engaged through help of the council, ONS, yourself, to try to really get our outreach to make sure we're touching on all the residents that surround this gem of a park in our Emerald Necklace. So right now it's an 18-month process. So depending how everything goes, we're looking at the master plan being pretty much complete by next summer. So looking at summer of 21.
Wonderful, wonderful. I will reserve my other questions, Madam Chair, for the next round in interest of time. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Councillor Janey. Next up is Councillor Baker, and then it'll be Councillor Sabi George. Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hi, Ryan. Hi, Chris, and all your team. Thanks for coming out here today. I just got an email from the Parks Department, Ryan, parcel priority, and it's exactly what I wanted to talk about. I want to talk about D&D has, I think we had one meeting on the parcel on Savin Hill Ave that used to be connected to the Tomasini. Yep. Do we have, not do we have, how should I move forward on that? Should that be like a private sort of partnership with you guys? You guys don't have an appetite to take on another park, would you?
I think through this parcel priority plan, we're going to be adding some more parks and even looking at land acquisition. That is a D&D specific site. So if that transferred over from D&D, I think it's something we can consider. It all just depends what the neighbors want there. Do they want it to be more of a place for adding more trees and serve as that type of urban wild type element? Or is there something, I know there's talk of food gardens, et cetera, and stuff in the community. So I think when we really find out what the want is and stuff, we can move forward. But I know that's owned by D&D. But this park priority plan is really asking residents to engage with us and tell us about any vacant lots, privately owned, public owned, D&D property, whatever it will be, that should be future parkland. So we're now able to take this and prioritize it and then look at either transferring it if it's a city property, or is it something that, whether through CPA or something else, we do some land acquisition to add more properties to our acreage.
So I would look at conversations with D&D about possibly transferring that over to the Parks Department, and then we could turn that, like, I would be in favor of the urban wilds. We talk about, and I'm a tree nut, Chris Cook, you know, I'm a tree nut. We could just plant some really nice trees there that would augment what Savin Hill Park does. And along that same line, for tree maintenance, we have a lot of mature trees around here that, I mean, I think just in Savin Hill Park, you would probably spend upwards of $1 million just trying to maintain those old oak trees. Some of them, they're probably 200 years old. Would that be something, do you think that should be maybe the formation of a friends group there, Ryan, or could we pursue state money for those large heritage trees?
Sure. I think there's a few different ways to go about it. One, we have that 100,000, which again doesn't go very far, towards doing tree maintenance in our parks, which over the years we never had any maintenance money for trees in parks. Almost when a tree falls down in the park, we had to go in and remove it. And the next time we looked at planting or adding stuff is when we went into a capital plan for that park or playground. So there is some nominal funds that we can do some work, but to your point, Councilor, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in certain parks, especially with those old heritage trees. So there's a lot of grant opportunities, groups that work out there, like we team up sometimes to speak for the trees, that are aware of different kind of opportunities that are out there. Yeah. But I think it would need a formation of some sort of a friends group, conservancy, something of that nature that would be able to help bring in some philanthropic dollars to do the work that's needed.
Okay, just giving myself some work to do here. In another lot that's very similar, it has the Roxbury pudding stone outcroppings and just sort of just trees that have just grown from whatever was at the end of, is it Rowell Street or Rill Street and Howe Street up off of Hancock?
Okay.
Are you familiar with that one, Ryan?
Is that the one that's right behind Downer Ave Playground near the Public Works facility?
No. That's the hill there, which we should be looking at planting that also. But if you go up Hancock Street and you take a left on, I think it's Rill, in between that and I think Bellevue Street is out behind. There's a plot of land there that maybe you could have someone identify what it is so we could start working on it to turn it into an urban wild, just kind of clean it up, maybe put some benches and that sort of stuff in there. Dorchester Park water source. Ryan, do we have any update on that?
Complete. So the work was done.
Oh, okay.
It's just, I don't think the water was turned on yet, but we worked out there. Tom Timmons on our team went out there and got that put in to help take care of the trees, because the Friends Group was very helpful in watering the trees that are out there.
Excellent. And we also had I know Mossman was our horticulture, our tree guy. He moved on. Is he still our tree guy, or did we hire another one, or do we have multiple? And I know it's just Joe and Danny, I think, they go out and trim. Have we augmented those crews at all?
Sure.
Or are we able to augment those?
Greg Mossman still serves as our tree warden and the head arborist, so he's still with us.
Oh, okay.
Two additional.
I thought he got a different job though. No.
Nope, he's back being the arborist. So there's
Okay.
two more other arborists that work on his team, in addition to, as you mentioned, Joe Dinsmore and Danny, that help do all the tree removals and really get in there to do some work. In this proposed budget is the addition of one more arborist to help, and this is going to help us as we're planting up to 2,000 trees now on these on street trees throughout the city. Look at warranty checks and make sure that we're really focusing on the health and wellness of trees.
Okay, and that's an important. I see the gavel. Just 1 second, Madam Chair. So the warranties is a big thing. Chris and I walked through in behind where I am here, and we have these places that plant trees and they die right away. I think it's important that we stay on top of those outside companies. And I'll end there and come back. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks so much, Councillor Baker. And I think the commissioner said earlier that keeping on top of those warranties is part of the staff capacity. It's also been added for this year. Is that right, Commissioner?
That's correct.
All right, great. Next up is Councillor Asabi George, and then it'll be Councillor Campbell, and then Councillor Mejia. Councillor Asabi George.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the Chief for being back with us and Commissioner Woods and his team. I just really want to applaud all of your work, and I'm really bummed out that we are likely not going to have any spring Mayor's Cups happening, as it's a big part of our family's experience, but just love it all around. Do also wonder whether or not we'll have any of the outdoor music series at either George Wright or perhaps Franklin Park golf course patios this year. So is that a yes or a no?
We're still trying to figure that out. So we have things penciled in and we have people on hold, but we're still waiting for guidance moving forward. Likely, if that does happen, it would probably be the later months of summer instead of as early as we start.
Great, and both those patios give us an opportunity to be socially distant from one another, I think, in a thoughtful way, while still sort of enjoying everyone's company. My questions, so thank you for that, and I look forward, hopefully, to seeing you on one of those patios later this summer. The questions I have, and I'll get through what I can in this first round. I've got questions around sharps and tracking the number of sharps that we're picking up in our parks across the city and the training of staff to do that, or are we consulting with the Mobile Sharps team through the Health Commission? I also have a question around geese saddling, how successful we were able to be this year. I think we got the season in, so curious about the numbers of eggs addled and whether we're in any place around counting our geese population and working to eliminate our geese population, as it, I think, really does very negatively impact our parks. And then I've got specific questions around accessing our recreation spaces by private for-profit entities that are renting our public parks, limiting who can use them by their membership, and charging quite a hefty price tag to be a part of those events. That's my list of questions. We'll get through what we can now and come back in round two. Thank you.
Sure. So I'm going through them one by one. What's the best way? So on geese addling, we just passed the 400 mark this week of over 400 eggs addled by our Boston Park Rangers. I've been told by Staff Ranger McNeil, we will be continuing that through June of this year, so we'll get some more. Biggest location that we've seen the most eggs so far is, of course, the Back Bay Fens, and we have seen some goslings over there as well. And it's any real waterways, so a lot of them are obviously in city parks, so we're on the lookout for that area. In response to the permitted fields, we are trying to continue to work on a way where we can come up with permitting fees. We're seeing now that, especially how the state has garnered a lot of fees, a lot of people are coming to the Parks Department since we don't currently charge any fees besides for electrical lighting. So working that out. I think one challenge we're trying to figure out, besides our priority system of having BPS leagues and then youth sports and then adult sports, resident and then adult non-resident is our priority system. Once we go through that, if there are fields that are open, people can apply for the permit. So sometimes 4 months before the field's still open, somebody applies for it and we give it to, you know, whatever private soccer league that applies for the permit. And then 2 or 3 months later, we have a youth group that comes in saying they want the field. We do our best to try to work something out, to try to say you can't have the whole week anymore. Can you do 2 or 3 days to really make this work? But that's something that we really have to work on, is figuring out the right strategy to charge people so it's done fair and equitably across the board.
Great. And then my the other question is around geese population. Do we have a count of how many geese we have here in the city or about? And then if we're already seeing goslings, is it too late to continue addling? And then probably for my next round, we can dive a little deeper into the sharps.
Sure. I don't know the geese population number off the top of my head. If we, I'm not aware of a count, but I will check with the park rangers and get that to you later this afternoon. And I've been told that we are going to continue addling through June. So
okay.
It seems
okay,
like
thank you. And then I know the role of there's some advocacy around increasing the number of park rangers. I think Councilor O'Malley initiated that conversation. They play a critical role in that geese addling, especially in the areas where we wouldn't want volunteers to go. I do think that perhaps this fall we could spend some time working with some of our private property owners, our larger institutions, and thinking about some of our privately held golf courses around addling on their property, because just at least visually, the geese population really seems to have blossomed. And if we're not able to addle in I think a significant way, it's almost not worth doing it at all if we're still seeing larger, growing populations, a growing population of geese. We spend a significant amount of money on our parks, rightfully so, as we should, but then to have the geese sort of destroy those parks almost immediately. I think about Moakley and the investment that we're looking to spend at Moakley, the investment that we're doing at Franklin Field, the investment that we do at our golf courses. The geese are a real problem. And so I look forward to doing some more work on that. I see the gavel, and we'll continue with my Sharps questions in the next round. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Asabi-George. Councillor Campbell's up next, and then it'll be Councillor Mejia and Councillor Edwards. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Councillor Bach, and Commissioner Woods, thank you. I hope you, Lauren, and the family are doing well and are safe and healthy. Commissioner Cook, of course, thank you for all you continue to do. I also want to quickly thank Alexis, who in animal control is very responsive, Rick and Steve, because we had the major issues at Puddingstone Park, and your team really stepped up along with law enforcement to make sure that park was clean. There was a lot of just awful activity going on there, so really wanted to thank those employees for their hard work. And of course, grateful to you guys for all you do, especially during COVID-19 and the opioid crisis. We have a lot of activity, so just wanted to start with a thank you. Just a couple of questions. Some of them were already asked by some other projects, including on the email we just got around sort of more targeted outreach. But how, with respect to COVID-19, I'm curious how it's affecting some of the timeline of our parks projects in District 4, particularly Harambe Park and other projects. That's one of my questions, and I'll sort of start there, and then I might have a couple others after that, depending on time.
Sure, Council. Thank you very much for the compliments to start off. The projects at Harambe are on pace. We are a little slightly delayed on the construction, so as soon as this moratorium gets raised, we look to be out there to finish work on phase 2. And then very happy that in this budget there is proposed money for design of phase 3. So design work will not stop. That has continued throughout this whole process. People have been working remotely to get that done. The major delays we've just seen of projects that were currently in construction, such as phase 2. But as soon as this moratorium is lifted, we hope to be back out there.
Thank you. And then I have two other questions. One, it has to do with the status of the burial fund, which that was a big win for community. Obviously, it's people tap into that fund under some very dire circumstances. So thank you guys for your work. Not just you, obviously, Commissioner, but your entire team. I see many of them represented here, but thank you guys for your work with respect to that fund. Not easy to process those requests, but curious if, you know, the status of that, how that's going. We've also gotten some questions around the fund being used for COVID-19 cases, right? And so curious if that's come up in your conversations. And then my second question is, we got a lot of pushback, and I'm sure you've heard this too from many folks with respect to lack of input from Dorchester and Roxbury communities with the Franklin Park redesign. And so curious what the response has been from the Parks Department. Some voices have been louder than others with respect to that. So wanted to raise that up here too, because we got some calls and emails with respect to that. And thank you again, and thank you to your incredible team. I'm seeing all of your beautiful faces. I'm having some internet connectivity issues, so I can't see you. But thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, in terms of the burial fund, we're still working with Tina Cherry once again this year and the Louis D. Brown Peace Institute for those burials that are equated to gang violence. So that will continue. It's very important work, and it's a great partnership. And Tina, as you know, is a gem to work with. So that will be continued. We have had a few inquiries about some burial support during this COVID crisis. So we are working with the mayor's offices on some policies and looking what was done or is being done in New York and other municipalities of what kind of support they're able to lend and the process that should be around that. So it is a work in progress, and we're doing our best. But again, kudos, I couldn't agree with you more, to our cemetery division that has been really out there every day. As I mentioned earlier, almost 100 burials this month, and making sure that every single person and family member that is buried in our cemeteries is done so with the utmost respect. And they really are some of our heroes during this crisis. So just wanted to, again, give some kudos to the cemetery.
No, that's right. I want to echo that. Thank you for saying that, but you're exactly right, Commissioner.
We did get some feedback that there were some groups that were missing the Franklin Park Master Plan. We're always trying to engage more. We've worked very successfully with Councilor Janey's Chief of Staff as well to make sure we got into some other groups that we had not tapped into. One important thing that I think we did is at the first community meeting, which had over 300 people, we said, please look around and let us know who is not here, who's not at the table, what voices are not being heard. We got 119 different bullets of names or organizations or, bike groups, et cetera, that were around that people did not see in the room. So we had our work ahead of us, but we were able to get all the contacts and get email addresses to try to accommodate as many of those people that weren't there, and making sure, in addition to the press releases, our street team, the design team, went out and actually did door hangers all around the park. They did a certain formula of however many square miles. So we did get some positive feedback for residents that have bought the park, thanking for that personal touch. But how do we move forward to make sure everyone's voice is heard? And it's more just reaching out to try to get as many networks as people in to help us spread the word. Not as many people are reading their local newspaper anymore. So if they're not seeing that press release and if they're not on social media, how are we able to connect with them? So those are the approaches that we're trying to take to make sure everyone has a seat at the table, especially on that project.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that, Commissioner. And lastly, I'll say I think my connectivity issues are because my laptop might have overheated when I was sitting outside earlier. during one of these budget hearings. So if you have not been outside, we've been doing parks and environment all day. Go outside today. I'm saying that to all of us. Councilor Brock, hopefully you get a break to go outside. But thank you guys so much for the work you're doing. Really appreciate you and your team. Stay safe and healthy. Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. I have my window open, which is almost the same thing. And actually, you can hear the children playing in the Myrtle Street playground from my window. All right, next up is Councillor Mejia, and then it'll be Councillor Edwards, and then Councillor Flaherty.
Hi, yes. Good afternoon, Chairman Bach. Can you hear me?
Hear you great.
Okay, great. Thank you to everyone who has been spending the entire day with us, and for those who are just joining us, welcome to the party. So I just have a few questions for the Parks Department. Just curious, I know when it comes to hiring, it's from what we've been hearing, it's just been it's been somewhat of a struggle. So I'm just curious what your outreach and recruitment strategies have been. How are you keeping track of your outreach efforts? Are you connecting with nonprofit organizations like Career Links, Goodwill? Just want a better understanding of how you're engaging communities of color in your outreach efforts for hiring. In regards to planting trees, I understand that there's a goal to plant 2,000 trees throughout our streets, and I'm wondering if any opportunities exist to support Black arborists and landscaping businesses. How are we contracting Black arborists through these projects? What does the procurement process look like for these businesses across the city for these opportunities? Are there opportunities to activate young people to help maintain trees? It's a good way for youth to learn about the environment and also create a pathway for a viable career option. And just curious as to whether there are any opportunities to tap BPS students and engage them in career exploration opportunities. And can you please provide an overview of Black minority business contract opportunities? And I don't know if you can hear my daughter on the background, but I'm sorry for that. She's just not in school right now. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm going to ask Diane Belfast, our Director of Human Resources, just quickly to take us through our hiring process and our outreach efforts. Diane, if you wouldn't mind jumping in.
Good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon, Councilor Mejia. Here in Parks, we have two recruitment strategies or recruitment tracks. One is a civil service track, which we work with the Human Resources Division under the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for our trade skill and unskilled labor service positions. And the other career path we have is the standard City of Boston Career Center career path. To answer some of your questions, we do have challenges recruiting. One of our biggest challenges is recruiting the Asian population, but for that, we do try to reach out to the local Asian civic associations to build partnerships. We'll reach out to the colleges and universities and specifically target any of their minority focus groups, such as Northeastern. They have an Asian diversity group on campus. BU, BC, UMass. We reach out to all the local colleges and universities to build some sort of relationship. And in addition, when it comes to youth employment, we do try to reach out to organizations such as YO to kind of get the young adults on a career path here at the city, whether it be civil service or non-civil service. One of the biggest hurdles we have at the Parks Department right now is residency, believe it or not, and hiring skilled trade labor. Prior to COVID, prior to this pandemic, recruiting was very challenging for us when it comes to identifying CDL licensed drivers as well as skilled trade laborers, because we could not compete with the construction force and workforce that was out there pre-COVID. However, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. So I'm sure once we're past this pandemic, our applicant pool is anticipated to change significantly. Daily, we're getting calls for individuals asking if we're hiring, do we have positions? And we've been directing them to not only our website, but the civil service positions as well. And I anticipate our workforce and applicant pool looking very abundant post this pandemic and the restrictions that we're faced with. As far as identifying CDL drivers, we work closely with the Public Works Department, and we're working very hard. And I am glad to say that this year we've developed a great relationship with the Human Resources Department, and they have been working with Parks specifically to help us start promoting within, so we can start acknowledging some of our employees that have been with the department or with the city for a number of years and have been held back for career advancement and career growth because of the civil service process.
That's great. Thank you for that. And curious for the other questions, Chief Woods?
Sure. So, Councilor, for trees, we are excited to have. That's okay. That's okay. I'll take the promotion. I love it.
Sorry, I'm still figuring everybody. I know you have a big title because everybody keeps going to you, Woods. Whatever you do, just
You're good. You're good.
So for trees, we are looking at planting 2,000. It's $1 million investment over past years. So we used to plant 1,000 trees. This year, we're going for 2,000 trees to be planted. We are looking for ways. Our planting contract is out there. It goes out to bid. So we work with a lot of firms, and we try to put out a checklist. There is not a lot of firms out there with black arborists in Massachusetts that we've done research with. We are trying to work on that, as our head arborist is the president of the Mass Arborist Association in the state. So he is able, when we have job postings, to put this out to everybody with arborist license. However, we are starting to train within. There are some members of our staff, specifically minorities, that don't have the arborist title, but are learning the trades of trees. So Daniel Ross on our staff has worked through the ranks to learn how to do tree removals, and during tree emergencies can chop them. He just doesn't have the certification to determine the health and wellness of trees, determine which limbs and stuff and species that can be cut. However, he is out there doing the arborist work, and that we're hopeful with that success, we're going to continue to be able to promote within to have more people prepared to help us in our tree division.
Thank you. I see the gavel, but I haven't heard the little sound. So are we good? Could I do one more?
One more if it's quick. Yep.
The pressure here. So I'm just really curious about, forget it. The pressure of trying to be quick. I'll go for the next round.
All right. Look forward to the next round. All right. Next up is Councillor Edwards. Then it'll be Councillor Flaherty. Councillor Edwards.
Hi, thank you very much. I just wanted to first start off my round with thank yous to Ryan Woods, to Chris Cook, to Jack Chavink, to Paul McCafferty, and to Steve Pascantilli. Each one of them has been direct contact with my office and making sure that we shine our brightest in our park. I want to say one of the biggest victories we had that I think was shared all over the place was the allergy signs. If you'll remember, those are a big deal. And I just wanted to make sure that they're still up and running, and that we are, maybe if there's a permanent version of them that we can continue to have, but it's a big deal. And we got folks from all over the country actually writing about how does this work and can we get that? So thank you so much. I'm going to go first at the level kind of district-wide, and then I want to go into specific neighborhoods. And I will not finish in this round, but I will start. So since I just brought up the allergy signs, if someone can give me an update on them, have they been taken down during the winter? Are they going to go back up? I know a lot of people aren't using parks, but actually, no, I know a lot of people are using parks. So I'm sure with COVID signs and allergy signs, just wondering how that is. Are we gonna, I'm sure folks, I'm sure this has been asked and answered. I apologize, Chairwoman Barr, but just infrastructure that we're building in for hand sanitizer, for masks, anything that's going to be available permanently at parks, if that's possible to have hand washing stations, if there's water available, that would be something. And then just again, district-wide, but my folks in Charlestown particularly are curious about your plan for, or if there's any movement on dog park planning. So I'll stop there, and then I'll wait for the next round.
So in terms of the allergy signs, which I don't know if you saw me show them off, Council, while you were talking, We do have another 150 that are all here, all laminated, ready to go up. We did not put them up with the playground areas being shut down just because we put all the signs up to say playgrounds temporarily closed. We did not take any of them down, but I'm sure over the winter weather did take many of them down. So you will be seeing more of those go up around the playgrounds this spring season. Hand sanitizing, something definitely we're looking into. We've been working with the state on opening guidelines as we move forward and looking at suggestions of how we can provide hand sanitizer or some certain ways to make sure we have some hand washing capabilities in our playground. So it's something we're getting price quotes on and looking at feasibility of actually obtaining hand sanitizer these days. But looking at something like those Purell stations, almost like Matt O'Malley's sunscreen stations or something that could be out there. So something we're looking into. Which other one did I not write down that I had that you asked specifically on? Oh, dog parks in Charlestown. Racking my brain. Eliza, do you know of anything that I'm not thinking of for potential dog recreation?
Well, nothing that's in the works yet, but I think that it's something that can be considered, should be considered, and be part of the process for Ryan Playground. It's a comprehensive park renovation. It's one of the larger parks in Charlestown, and as we get started in that design process, if the community is interested in that being considered, then I think it should be considered.
Okay. I definitely, they're interested in it being considered. I know that there was, we do have, or there's been unofficial parks, made, and that's resulted in, I think, a recent fight, if not arrest, and back and forth. Tensions have grown a great deal. So we want to just make sure that there's an infrastructure being built. I would love to work with you and Charlestown Dogs about designing it. What we saw happen in the North End, kudos for that dog park. I think it's probably deserves some awards of how well it was so designed, but making sure that we're building in an infrastructure for all of our residents, including the four-legged ones. Let's see, where am I? I'm looking for the gavel up. It's not up yet. So I'm going to go into the district a little bit. I am particularly excited about the trees and the $1 million investment going in. As you know, we're in an environmental justice community in East Boston. We have the airport that's raining down pollutants regularly. We have higher rates of asthma and COPD. And so having trees would be, I think, one of the low-hanging fruits and ability for us to fight back a lot of the EJ after effects on our community. And so we are particularly, I mean, people are ready, willing, and able. We have folks looking at, we got a grant recently to put in individual trees in people's private property. But tell me how you're working directly with the community so that they can request a tree. And how this, is there a quota in the $1 million for X amount per neighborhood, plus the 900,000?
Sure. So this year we have the 900,000. So with the 1.9, we'll be able to get to those 2,000 trees. The best way is still putting it in through 311. When somebody puts in a tree request, we're able to go out there and inspect the tree pit. There's a lot more that goes into it, as you know, Counselor, of making sure there's not any overhead wires, that it's 10 feet from a hydrant, that it's within 10 feet of a curb cut, et cetera. So making sure, and there's also ADA accessibility to make sure we have the proper pathway there for a tree pit to go in. So that is the way we look at it. And then once they are approved of the planting location, we get to them over the fall and spring planting.
Are you hiring any additional folks, another arborist, for example?
There is, in this proposed budget, there is an addition of one more arborist to our team. And we're also very grateful. I think you might have touched on it, Council. I know Councilor Mejia did a little bit. We're also working with people like Speak for the Trees, who are having you go out there and doing some work to measure tree pits and look to designate locations for us to go look at as potential planting locations. And we've worked with NOAA in the past on their tree watering program. Something we hope to continue. We gave them a bike, and we have one other watering bike. So if we have another eager youth organization that's looking to get active, we'd love to help supply them this bike to try to get as many trees watered around the city as possible.
Thank you. We'll continue the next round.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Councillor Edwards. Next up is Councillor Flaherty, and then it'll be me. Councillor Flaherty? Councillor Flaherty, you're muted. One sec. All right, now you're unmuted.
Can you hear me, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Do I get my 10 seconds back?
Yes, I haven't started.
Very, thank you.
Starts now.
Good afternoon, Commissioner. It's obviously good to see you, and congratulations on your elevation. I know this is your first budget as the commissioner. I see a 3.88 increase, obviously, which speaks to the second shift of maintenance out of Franklin Park and the urban wilds. So wanted to get maybe a quick update, and I'll put all the questions out, and then you can take them one by one. Get a quick update on the animal care and control. I know it was moved, as you know, as chair of government ops at the time. We moved it we moved it to parks. So wanted to follow up and to see how that transfer is going and what dividends that's paying. Want to talk a little bit about tree planting, make sure that we're keeping up with our commitment on the tree planting and also tree pruning. It's my understanding, was brought to my attention, we actually don't have a tree pruning division. I think we might sub that work out. And I think that we're big enough and green enough as a city that we may want to have our own team, dedicated team to prune. And we get a lot of it, whether it's tree trunks uprooting sidewalks, creating hazardous conditions, or whether it's on the street wrapped around, whether it's some of our cable wires, et cetera, or causing damage to one's property. I think the list is long, at least based on the calls that I get. And I think the answer is that we kind of have to get in the queue, and then we have to put it out to bid. And I think we're a little better than that in 2020. We should have our own tree pruning division, my 2 cents on it, and hopefully that this budget could accommodate that. And also with respect to the tree canopy world and making sure that we have enough, we have trees providing shade and reducing temperatures in areas that very deep. And then just shifting briefly, I'm on record, or at least I want to go on record in this hearing. My colleague, Councilor O'Malley, knows how I feel about it. The calls to my office have been voluminous with respect to Billings Field and making sure that we make the necessary upgrades at that field. And then annually, as the longest serving city councilor, I don't think a budget has gone by when I have not been advocating strongly for our mounted ranger unit. Time has come to put them in the line item so that we don't have to go through this exercise every year. It's my opinion. But they add tremendous value to our park system, and they ought to be respected in terms of a line item in the parks budget. And then moving forward, we're going to need them probably now more than ever with our parks and necklace and social distancing, et cetera. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I'll listen to the answers, and I look forward to working with you. Parks has been a great asset for our city, and to all of the workers that are under you. You're only as good as the team around you, of course, but the dedicated men and women of the Parks Department, they do tremendous work. They really put a great green shine on our city, and proud to support them annually in our city's budget. So that's it. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Councilor. We are very excited in this budget that we do have a significant investment in trees with the addition of an arborist, the 2,000 tree plantings that we're going to do on city street trees, and the $500,000 for the urban forestry master plan. So we are really happy about this investment, that we're moving forward in a positive direction to increase the 27% tree canopy that currently exists in the city, to make sure that grows. In terms of tree pruning, you are correct. We don't have a separate tree pruning division. We just have the urban forestry division that has 3 arborists on it. They mostly oversee contracts. So there is a contract for planting, a contract for removal, and a separate contract for prunings and maintenance. So the way it works is our arborists, when somebody puts something in through 311, they are able to go out and do an inspection and say, yes, this tree should be trimmed. So they are the one that approves it, makes the recommendation, and gives the work order to the contractor that can go out and do the work. The way they do the work is by neighborhoods. So instead of doing one in West Roxbury, then heading over to South Boston, they try to get all of the West Roxbury out of the queue, then you go over to South Boston, Dorchester, et cetera. So we are trying to focus on that and trying to always get that queue down so it's a quicker response time in terms of tree pruning. Billings Field, also, as mentioned, we couldn't agree with you more. That is a priority for us. We know the field needs significant renovations, especially the electrical upgrades, drainage. As Councilor O'Malley mentioned, there was work done on the tot lot named after firefighter Kennedy at Billings Field. So that was done. Some court renovations were done, but we didn't do a whole comprehensive look at Billings Field, and that's something that we want to dive into with future capital funds. Mounted Ranger Unit, we're very appreciative of the men and women of the Boston Park Rangers. I want to be clear, I don't think there is any threat to losing the mounted unit. We are very supportive. I can't see the Park Rangers without the horses. They are just as much a part of our team. and we're very happy to have them. We're very excited that 8 new members just passed through their seasonal training, and they're now out on the street to serve as that goodwill ambassador, answer questions, and also enforce any park-related ordinances that are out there. And I wanted to add one thing, Council, that I was prepared on to blow you away with, but you didn't ask this time. We finally, with the help of COVID, went to remote work locations. So a lot of our maintenance workers out in the field are not wasting that time driving to Franklin Park and then getting all the way to Alston, Brighton, or to South Boston. We've really come to the 21st century so people can work more closely to their work site, so they're more efficient in getting more work done in their actual neighborhood. So,
that's great news, Commissioner. I thought Cook took care of that. That's why I didn't ask it, but I'm glad to hear it. And on a footnote on the Billings field, just be cognizant, several years back we had a major rat infestation with the burrowing under Billings. So if and when that project starts, I would ask that ISD and others, our Road and Control Division, get out there early and make sure we protect those homes and businesses all around Billings as we start to make the necessary capital investment there. But thank you again, Commissioner. That's great news about the location and the how the guys and the men and women from the department check in and check out. Perfect. Great news.
I did not mention Animal Care and Control, Councilor, so I apologize. I missed that at the top. It's been a really smooth transition with the addition of Animal Care and Control. We're very happy to have them with us. It seems like a natural connection with dog parks that we have, having swans in the parks. It all makes sense to have Animal Control be part of our family. So they've made some positive steps forward. We're now able to get donations on one Boston Day. We put a whole pledge out there, and the animal shelter received. People were able to send stuff over to the animal shelter directly on their Amazon Prime accounts, and they got all these kind of donations. So it's great that we're finally able to accept donations in the Animal Care and Control, and we will have a way to do that going forward. We are seeing some revenue go down right now for Animal Care and Control because this is the time of year where people do the rabies shots and do the dog licensing. So I think that will pick up as business returns more to normal, but some folks are still not comfortable with the online transactions or don't have the capability. So trying to work with that, have snail mail opportunities and ways that we can have that service provided.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Great. Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. All right. I think we haven't been joined by any other colleagues, so I'm up next. Thanks again, Commissioner. And thank you for being in such consistent touch with Maya and with me. I just wanted to start out by asking you, I had checked in a few weeks back about the Commonwealth Ave, the Kenmore Block project, which I'm excited to see in this budget at a sort of beginning stage, but just want to understand the timeline there. And also, I know it involves some collaboration or coordination with the MBTA because of their space underneath there. I went to a meeting on sort of the plans there a while back, but didn't get much of a sense of the timeline details, so wanted to ask you about that.
Yes. So my colleague Liza Meyer is very well prepared, and she's been studying the Kenmore Block study. So Liza, if you'd please.
Sure. Thanks. There's money in this upcoming budget to be able to advance the design of the Kenmore Block. As you know, the conceptual design was led by the Friends of the Public Garden. So there's some initial planning that's been done, and yes, that initial planning work was done in collaboration with the MBTA. The T has a tunnel under there. They have that tunnel structure, historic tunnel structure, I guess is the way to describe it, all of which needs to be incorporated into the design of that parcel. So that coordination will continue going forward. If we can advance the design work this year, we hope to partner with the Friends of the Public Garden on fundraising around construction and implementation. At this point in time, there's not construction funding for this project in their budget or in the city capital budget, but that's something that we can work collaboratively on as we move forward.
Yes, no, I noticed that. That's why I asked about it. But yes, thank you so much. And and look forward to partnering on that. I think it would mean a lot. And I know from visiting that it would mean a lot to the folks who live at Kenmore Abbey, just across the street, to have that park be a more pleasant place to sit. Great. And then I was wondering if we could just talk through the Boston Common Master Plan, how the COVID emergency is affecting the timeline for that, and where we should think about how we should think about where we are on the engagement process there.
Liza?
Sure. Yeah, so if we weren't facing the COVID-19 crisis right now, we would have gone back out to the community with another community meeting this spring already. So we have had to put that meeting a bit on hold, and we're rethinking the approach so that we could do something in a remote format as we move forward. But there's a lot of design work to be done, so the design work can continue even as we obviously have to rethink the engagement piece. So the design team, led by Weston and Sampson, has been advancing their work, looking at sort of some of the key areas in the park, pulling the information we've received through a lot of engagement to date, whether it was through the survey, through the community meetings we've held, through the 10 different pop-up events that we held across the city and participated in. They have a lot of information to build from, stakeholder conversations. So I would anticipate seeing an online meeting in some format this summer as we share ideas with the community and get feedback to advance the plan. The hope is to have the plan complete by the end of the year.
Great. Okay, yeah, no, there's a lot of eagerness around that. So again, I'd love to help be part of making sure that we have a robust process there and get people involved, think about creative ways to do that. We're definitely seeing the park be used now more than ever. I was wondering on that front, this is just a quick question for the commissioner, but we're obviously two of the trustees on the maintenance fund. And I know we pulled down that meeting in March as COVID sort of took off. And I just want to confirm that, we're going to restart that process.
Yep, we'll be getting that back on the books. We started to get some quotes from our walkthrough of some much needed areas in the park, such as paving areas, safety surfacing areas, masonry repair. So we should be moving forward with that, and I will make sure we prioritize that.
Great. And then I know my district's thrilled about the plan to invest in this new project in the Back Bay Fens pathways. And I just think it's so important because, the Fens it's one of the jewels that Olmsted gave us, and the only way it's sort of equally accessible to all Bostonians is if you have those pathways. It really is a walking park. So excited about that. Would love to understand just a little bit more about the timeline on that. I know obviously we haven't done, we gotta do the community process. We have to think about where should those pathways be. I mean, many of them may be there already, but some may not. And then how we're gonna coordinate that with the Army Corps of Engineers project. And I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit to those pieces.
Sure. We're expecting the $36.5 million Army Corps Phase 2 to start this summer, potentially as early as July. So that will be up and going prior to us being able to get a designer on board. If this is approved through the budget, we'll also go through the process. So I think we would start this process more spring of 21, going through. I don't know if it'll be it'll be a robust community process. I don't know if it'll be 3 meetings, 4 meetings. It might only be 1 or 2 to see its pathways. So there are a lot of pathways that exist. Should we repair the existing ones? Which ones, how should it be phased? Which ones are in worse conditions than others as we move forward? So of course we will work in partnership with the Army Corps to make sure with fencing and the way things are up that we're not really protruding all access for people to cut through the park. So there will have to be a great amount of collaboration. I would expect though, by the time these meetings and stuff happen, we're looking at next summer at the early end of, starting construction. So the Muddy River would be about a year under construction at that point.
And remind me again, I'm sorry, I should know, I did go to the meeting, but how long the construction timeline for the Muddy River piece is?
I don't think they ever quite clarify and give an end date. However, we're looking at several years. So I think it's at least a 3-year project.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I just know, this has come up on a number of fronts, but I know there's a lot of concern about the sort of ecological health of the river. And so, questions about water quality are something I hear a lot about in my district. And sort of, I don't know, as we think about the built environment around the river, I'm anxious to think about how we also support the cleanness of the water, especially as it flows into the Charles, right? And just it's a huge advantage for us to be having these construction projects going on, just trying to think about how we keep that piece in focus too. All right, I think that's my time, and you gotta, do as I say and as I do here. So I will cut myself off, and we'll go back up to the top for another round of questions. Leading off with, I think it's Councillor Flynn. Councillor Flynn, you there for the second round? All right, we're gonna move along. Councilor Breeden. Everybody.
I'm gonna sneeze. My sneeze. I was curious about the planning for the McKinney Fields, McKinney Playground renovation, about engaging with the residents at Faneuil Gardens, since they're the nearest of butters and probably the most users of that park. How is that going? Because I noticed that many of the meetings were not, you know, we should probably have a meeting. Well, now that we have COVID, probably not, but I really feel that we should be making some concerted efforts to engage with those residents.
Yes, that's specifically one that we've had a community meeting on. Of course, the master plan was already complete. And we're ready to continue the community meetings. It just didn't seem like one we were ready to go virtual with, because we were afraid that we really wouldn't be as inclusive as we needed to in that community. So I think as we move forward, we're going to look at strategies to make sure we're including the housing development across the street, whether the meeting is there or there's access to the people there. I know we flyered it for the first meeting, didn't get a great attendance. So I think working more with the housing authority and their property management to try to engage more residents to make sure their voices are heard as the direct abutter.
Very good. Is there a timeline for that particular park?
So we're still working. We're still working to try to raise some philanthropic dollars to go on top of the additional capital funds, and working out with residents whether it's artificial turf, if it's natural grass, whether the lighting is there, not there, how we improve the lighting, what's the time of the lighting. So it's hard to give a timeline because there's still a lot of details to work out. We are just trying to work on right now on that timeline when we can get everybody at the table to engage them. So make sure we're moving this project on in the right path.
And there was some concern about the safety of artificial turf. I know that the safety in that artificial turf domain has improved dramatically. I think there's some need for public education to assuage their concerns. Because given the fact it's prone to flooding and unplayable surfaces, I think artificial turf is probably the way to go there.
I'd agree with you. And yes, there are some studies out there, and I think Liza and our team in design and construction is happy to engage and make sure residents are at ease and understand the improvements that have been made in the past several years in terms of artificial turf.
Yeah. The other issue, with a lot of development over between along Com Ave and from Com Ave over to the Brookline line, there actually are no parks in that area, apart from a pocket park, the Brian Honan Memorial Pocket Park on Alston Street. I really feel that when new developers come along with proposals, that we should be encouraging them to develop even a small pocket park to give some green relief in a very densely developed area. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
I'd agree with you, Councillor. That's something when any development comes in within 100 feet of a park and they don't have enough open space and, with their variance, we do work with them, whether it's donating to another park or adding green space on their property. So that's something we can do. Also, if there is any lots there, publicly owned, privately owned, or vacant lots that we could put into our parcel priority plan, that would be something we'd really like to look at, whether it's something that's transferred from another city department to us, or if it's something that we have to do some land acquisition, maybe through help of some CPA funds or some city capital dollars in order to add more green space, especially in that area you mentioned.
What's happening is many private developers are building green space like roof decks and within the confines of their building, but it's a private, it's not publicly accessible. So that's the problem. Now this might seem like a weird question. Do you ever get inquiries about green burials or ecologically friendly disposal of remains at the end of life?
That's a very interesting question, and one I'd have to get back to you on after talking to my cemetery staff. That's something I've learned a lot about burials over the past month and all the different options to do it, but that is not something that has come across my path yet, so that's something I'll look into.
So many people are opting for cremation these days rather than burial, and there's the whole idea of a bio urn where you would bury the ashes and then you would have a tree planted, so it might dovetail in with your tree planning. A permanent memorial with a tree for the person who's passed. Anyway, thank you so much for all your work. It's been a really interesting conversation this afternoon, and I really appreciate all that you're doing to make our city more green and pleasant land. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Breeden. Next up is Councillor O'Malley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to Councillor Baker and Campbell, Councillors Baker and Campbell, who said, yeah, it's a beautiful day, we should be outside. So this is, in 10 years, the first time I'm sitting on my back deck. You can see some beautiful trees behind me here in West Roxbury. So it's great to be Zooming with you all from this vantage point. Commissioner, want to briefly go through the budget sort of line items. Personnel's up personnel is up 362,000. How many positions is that? And does that also reflect overtime and step increases?
That will have the step increases in there, but that's mainly for our 6 new positions, 4 of which will be that second shift that will be reporting out of maintenance Wednesday through Sunday, 1 to 9, as well as the addition of an arborist to our urban forestry, and addition of our much needed addition to our staff at the urban wilds division to help take care of that. And just to touch on, Councillor, I think your earlier question, or maybe it was one of the questions you prepared for us, this second shift being based out of Franklin Park and not just downtown is going to be able to respond quicker to areas such as West Roxbury, Roslindale, High Park, things that might have taken us an hour, hour and a half to get across the city to respond to an emergency. So I think we'll actually have some staffing. If there's graffiti, broken glass, overflowing trash barrels, we'll be able to respond in real time Wednesday through Sunday in the afternoon when the parks are busiest.
That's terrific. As you know, and as the council president knows, Franklin Park is the geographic center of the city, so to have some more resources deployed there to help all neighborhoods is terrific. So that's great. My only quibble with that is I wish it was more, because I know that even more positions are needed, but that's a great positive step. Lease equipment is up $239,000. Is that just vehicles, I assume?
Getting more vehicles, a couple sidewalk machines to help us with snow removal. But it's mostly vehicles. As you know, our staff, some divisions have to report to 30 to 40 different parks in their district. So it's more crew cabs getting them from location to location, and our fleet is aging and constantly in repair over at Central Fleet Maintenance. So it is to help us get some more vehicles.
Great. And I know Chief Cook drives an electric vehicle because he and I have the same car. How many electric vehicles do you have in your fleet, Commish?
I'll have to get that for you. I'm not aware off the top. I know we have a couple hybrid vehicles, but I'm not sure for fully electric vehicles.
Great, thank you. Yeah, hybrids and electric and hybrid would be just helpful for my curiosity. Current charges, obligations up about 200K. Is this just sort of debt service, pension, liability, et cetera?
Correct.
It goes up every year in every department. And then land and non-structures up about $239,000. What's that? This is the last line item, 58,000.
Steph, are you aware of that one?
Yes. So a large part of that was the reinvestment we got for tree pruning and removal. That was about 147,000, and then we also got about 25,000 for additional green infrastructure services. So those are the 2 largest ones that came from that line item.
Thank you, Stephanie. I think it's because I'm outside, so I didn't hear that all, but I'll get that later from my colleagues.
Can you hear me a little bit better
yeah,
now?
that's much better, yeah.
I'll just repeat really quick. The 2 biggest line item increases were about $147,000 for tree pruning and removal services, and then $25,000 for green infrastructure services, contracted services.
Great, thank you. One of the goals, which I know you hold near and dear to your heart, Commission, it's been gratifying to see it actually come to fruition through your leadership and your predecessor, Chief Cook's leadership, is attendance at organized events. I think there are better parks-sponsored events, bringing in education, bringing in sports, bringing arts and culture than when I was growing up in the city 30 plus years ago. You had a goal to increase it again this year to 72,000. I think it's unlikely to happen through no fault of your own, just given the pandemic that we are in. Have you had some thoughts in terms of how you will approach some of the summer programming, given the fact that there likely will be some, will be part of our steps to get out of the pandemic? There will still need to be some distancing. There'll still need to be some safety precautions. Have there been any thoughts on sort of how the Parks Department could approach it, or perhaps your conversations with colleagues from around the country on how we're going to deal with some of the summer programming?
Sure. So we started with our fitness programming already. We're offering 5 classes right now virtually. So where people can't get to the gym right now with gym memberships, you can go on and take Zumba, Tai Chi, kickboxing, etc. So those classes are ongoing. It's seeming successful, so we're going to try to bring that on to maybe start doing some golf lessons as well, teaching people tips like that and move forward. It does not look like our Mayor's Cup tournaments may be likely, or our Boston Neighborhood Basketball League program, which will be in its 51st year, are likely to happen with the social distancing rules. So we're trying to figure that out. And we're hopeful that as we get to August, we might be able to have some more, whether it's movie nights and things of that nature, where we can social distance, or maybe it's we're thinking about drive-ins, or how you can really to be creative to get people out there for this. And I will throw a plug in here. Mayor Walsh was very adamant about the need for adding more work for summer youth. So with a lot of our programs being down, such as concerts or movie nights maybe, and BMBL, we won't have enough jobs that usually are the ones for our DYEE youth programs. So working with Public Works and the Office of Economic Development to try to come up with some jobs, whether it be former like the Red Shirts program was, where we were able to clean some urban wilds, get to some parks, dead-end streets, making sure that youth have summer programming and have some employment, some money coming into their check every week, despite our lack of programming.
I think that's great. I am a huge proponent of resurrecting the Red Shirts program. It's a great opportunity to give young people a terrific experience and really help beautify our parks and open spaces. So that's encouraging to hear. Finally, I want to give a shout out to
Could I just interrupt quickly? I think that Councilor O'Malley has shared his screen with us. So you maybe want
to do that. Thank you. I hope.
No, you're still doing it, Councilor O'Malley.
There you go.
How's that?
There you go.
Well, now you can see my emails. Terrific. Thank you for that, Councilor Sabi George. My last question involves the animal care and control and the great work that Amanda Kennedy does. The council passed the puppy mill bill several years ago. I wonder if there's any data on that, and you may not know, Commissioner Chief, and we can follow up with that later, but just curious if there's been any curbing of sales of pets sort of on the street corners, looking at stores. I know there was one store that we were working with to help them close down. Do you have any data on that?
Don't have specific numbers on that, but happy to look into it for you, Councilor, and get your response.
That's great. Okay, well, thank you very much. Appreciate all your terrific work, and appreciate your great work in these extraordinary times.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Councilor O'Malley. Sorry, I thought you were maybe about to share something with us, or I would have called the screen out sooner. Okay, next up is Council President Janey, and then it'll be Councilor Baker. Councilor Janey.
Thank you so much. I did text you, Matt. So I was wondering that myself, but then when he didn't get on with the presentation, I texted him. And I want to echo Councilor O'Malley's sentiments about Franklin Park. It's great to see the investment there and the expanded outreach. I wasn't quite clear. I know we talked about engagement earlier. Could you remind me what we're doing moving forward to engage folks in this new age of COVID? Are we trying to do more stuff online? Are we having meetings spread out with social distancing? What's the plan?
Sure. So we're working through that. Some projects are easier to do virtually than others. So we're trying to engage, for example, on the master plan as much as we can. However, that's going to be some large group setting. So we're hopeful that as things get back to normal, we can get everybody back to the same room. But we are looking at all other options. We have a few meetings on the books right now, including Malcolm X, to do virtually as we move forward. But some of them, do we do webinars for them? Is it Google Chat? What's the best way to do these? So that's what we're working with Do It on.
Thank you. And Commissioner, anything particularly with Malcolm X or any other, parks in my district, because I know there are a lot of projects underway. However, we can be supportive in helping to get the word out in terms of when these meetings are happening, whether they're happening virtually, whether they're, in locations where we're spreading people out. Happy to continue to work and partner with you on this. I am also super excited about reimagining what fun time in the summer could look like in Boston. Drive-ins, I've always been a big fan. Our closest drive-in is, I can't remember the town, but it's way out somewhere. And so I don't often get out there. I don't have a car. So when I do go, I have to make all of these elaborate plans to get out there. And so to think about that here, I think is incredible. There are a couple of basketball tournaments that I will be incredibly sad to see go away, should that be the need for that this summer. You know, I have in Derby Park, we have the Michael Bivens tournament that he does around his birthday every year. This is a big anniversary for Belle Biv DeVoe this year. And so I know we were hoping for a lot of good celebration this summer, so it'll be disappointing if we can't do those things. But I would be interested in thinking about other ways we could have fun celebratory events with community, particularly given the shutdown. I would, just before signing off on my second round, I am very interested, as I mentioned, always hearing the numbers of the spend, what we're doing in terms of contracting and procurement here. If you have the numbers available for the hearing, that's wonderful. If not, as a follow-up, that would be great. Looking back at FY20, what the projected spending is for FY21 in terms of businesses in Boston, businesses owned by people of color and businesses owned by women, and then what plans you're thinking for improving those numbers. And then for any of the construction projects for the parks and the city overall, also interested in the breakdown. I remember we discussed some of this in an earlier hearing, I think, when we were talking about the BRJP goals. And I believe this was an area that we were hoping to improve moving forward. So if there is a plan in place for this, or a plan that you're working on and could share at a later time, I would certainly be interested in that. And again, anything that we can do to partner to get the word out on engagement and on these new activities and reimagining what summer looks like in the Boston area and all of these amazing parks that we have. Happy to think about that with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilor. And I wanted to point out that I made sure I put the mural crews painting of Franklin Park right behind me there. So you got some credit when you see that one. Yes, so we're very excited for the summer, trying to figure out new ways. We've been attending the NRPA, National Recreation and Park Association's webinars to find out what other municipalities are doing across the country during these times, to what new ideas. So we're constantly flowing on that, and we'll make sure to include you as we do. I'll let Stephanie go in a second to see if we have exact numbers on what we plan to spend in fiscal year 21. We may have to provide that to you afterwards. But just in terms of BRJP numbers, we have 9 park projects currently underway, 18% of residents, 30% POC, 5% women. Of the 100 contracts that we have, 5 are by WBEs or MBEs. However, we did find that there are an additional 5 women-owned businesses that have not registered themselves with economic development to be part of the WBE and MBE program. So it brings us up to 10, but we're going to work to make sure they register themselves so we do have an accurate count going forward. We have a bid strategy form that we put out as we put out every construction bid. So when vendors come in with their bids, they have to have this bid strategy form, and that makes us prove to them what is your outreach strategy specifically to the minority communities and to women-owned businesses that they have to put in. I don't know if we are one of the only departments that still uses that form, but that's something that we really push. We're able to look more at qualifications on our design services as compared to construction, where design is not low bid, it's a set price. So one of our qualifications, we try to incorporate in the criteria of women-owned businesses and minority-owned businesses when we're looking at design strategies. That's something where we do have flexibilities and can use that as one of the qualification space. We've been attending the Office of Economic Development's open houses and transferring a lot of cards with landscapers, specifically that are interested in getting involved, so we can tell them of projects that are coming up. So if they want to subcontract with a vendor, trying to make those connections so they can be there. And specifically with landscaping, as we saw a lot of minority-owned businesses in the landscaping field, we've done 10 separate contracts. So some are by site areas, so there might be an East Boston or a Roxbury cutting as well as slope cutting on our different hills and slopes. So that way we can diversify our population and not putting all the mowing into one big contract that goes to a big firm. We're really able to work with those smaller businesses. So
That's excellent. I want to just say thank you on that note, really affirming the breaking down of the contracts to give opportunity to some of the smaller local vendors. That's wonderful. Thank you so much for that.
Sure.
I didn't mean to cut you off, Commissioner. Just
No.
wanted to thank you again. And then join my colleagues outside. So finish up this round so I can join them outside. Thank you again for your work and your partnership. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. All right, next up is Councillor Asabi George, and then it'll be Councillor Mejia, and then Councillor Edwards. Councillor Asabi George.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to everyone for your detailed responses to all the questions. I want to just follow up. I do have my question about sharps, but I wanted to follow up quickly on Councillor Braden's comments around turf. I have mixed feelings about turf, and I've talked to Chief Cook about this. I've talked to the Commissioner and others about this. I think that it certainly does create a longer season, and maintenance issues are eliminated when we go to turf. But I do worry about over the long term when we're constantly leaning on turf as the response when we're renovating or putting in a new park, that eventually our kids, or at least Ryan's kids, because mine are a little bit older, will not ever play on real grass. And I have an emotional feeling about that. And I also think that over the long term, although we've improved the quality of turf, so we don't have the same sort of concerns around toxic exposure, we are, I just have a problem with that. So I'd love at some point to either be thoughtful about some sort of analysis around the use of turf and the overuse, I think, of turf in our parks. If there's a quick response to that, I'm happy to take it or receive it, but I do want to talk about sharps.
I think you're right, Council. We're trying to make that balance and make sure we really educate residents when they're out there at the community meetings, where I think they push for turf, as you mentioned, for the longer season or better drainage. If it rains that morning, you can still play on a turf field where you can't necessarily on natural grass. But really looking at how many playable hours you can have on artificial turf. They say, if there's more than, I forget the exact number, but I'll get it for you, X amount of hours in a week that somebody's using the field, it should not be artificial turf. You should be using natural turf. So we need to do a better job educating at those public discussions when I think everyone's so quick to jump in and say artificial turf is the answer.
Counselor, the only other thing that I would add is that I think also from a planning perspective, we need to look at geography. It makes a lot of sense to expand those recreational play hours by geography, but it doesn't make a lot of sense to take away the natural turf that has a huge stormwater benefit and some carbon sequestration benefit, and certainly a heat island effect benefit, just because you want to extend hours, especially if there's another turf facility immediately adjacent. So as you look at geography and you look at heat island, you look at stormwater, that has to be part of our planning moving forward.
Great, thank you for that. And I appreciate your thoughtfulness and to sort of be considerate of that when we're planning any park redesigns or reconstruction and renovation. So back to my comments and questions about sharps and improperly discarded needles in our parks. Curious about us keeping track of calls and the work of the men and women of the Parks Department around disposing of those sharps, and whether or not staff is trained to do the disposal, or is that in partnership with the mobile sharps team? Sort of curious about sharps in general and making sure that we're limiting the number that are in our parks and disposing of them quickly. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor. So we are keeping track. We have forms that each of our regions have to fill out on a weekly basis to keep tabs on how many needles we're finding, if there's any hot spots. We work in close proximity with the Boston Public Health Commission and their SHARP team for problematic areas. I think the help of the second shift on Wednesday through Sunday will help us by Ramsey Park, Madison Park, Orchard Gardens, Clifford, areas that we see high spikes in needles. We'll continue with that so we're able to do it. We still encourage people to put it through 311 so sharps can respond. However, when the men and women of the Boston Parks and Recreation Department are on site emptying the trash barrel or picking up trash, they are able to pick up sharps. Each of them have a biohazard container in their truck and did go through, I won't have Diane give you a whole explanation, but we actually do have a training guide that we'd be happy to share with you that each new employee gets. And we did a training with Boston Public Health on how to properly pick it up and how you shouldn't just be putting it in a Pepsi can or Coke can or something. And, people come to redeem the cans and just put the needles back on the ground. So really working through with them to make sure they're being properly disposed, they're being safely disposed, and then our team has the right equipment from gloves to pickers and safety boxes.
Great. Now, you also tracking the numbers, the volume of needles that we're finding? Or if not, where are they being disposed? I want to make sure that they're being counted somewhere because that's a significant problem. And it's a budget line item to sharps disposal. Thank you. Whether it's Diane or Commissioner Woods.
Sure. So my understanding is after we pick them up in our boxes, we empty our boxes into the main box with Boston Public Health Commission. So they are counted. I think I don't know if it's 24-hour trauma or what group they have in there, but it is counted by BPHC.
Very good, thanks. And I'd love to see that brochure that you share with new staff. I don't know if Diane or somebody else had something to add, but if not, I am all done with my questions for today. Thank you.
Di, anything on the training that I missed?
Nope, we'll send out the brochure. Just one quick point. When BPH is not able to pick up the sharps, the EMS team has also been partnering and helping out our crews, picking that up from the yard. So we definitely make sure it gets into the right hands.
Very good. Very good. Thank you, Diane. Thank you, everybody.
Great. Thank you so much, Councillor Savvy George. Councillor Mejia, and then it'll be Councillor Edwards. Councillor Mejia.
Oh, that's not what the chat said. I thought I was.
No, Campbell's had to go, so it's you. Jumped.
Can't take me off guard like that. Okay, wait a minute. Get my little.
I know you're always ready. Come on, Councillor Mejia.
Trying to put me on the spot here. Okay. So a few questions. One is specifically about how are we feeling being prepped for COVID-19, opening up our parks? Are we looking at having hand sanitizers all over, and on all the parks, like little, those little squirty bottles everywhere? Just curious about signage and communication that you're thinking about. Is that part of your plan?
Yes. So right now we are working on with the state that they're going to be giving some guidance of how phased openings should be for parks, playgrounds, courts, athletic facilities. So I think it will be a rollout as we get a better grasp on what areas can be opened. We are really worried about high touch areas. So obviously gates and swings and slides that people are coming into close contact. So hand sanitizer or hand washing stations are a big part of the conversation. I think it's a challenge to try to get hand sanitizer right now sometimes because there's such a need for it. But that is something we're looking at, if there can be stations, kind of like Purell stations that are put in or other kind of things that we can put in the parks just to encourage people when we're able to go out and use them, that they can be safe and clean and wash their hands.
Thank you. Is Commissioner Woods, is that your appropriate title?
It is, thank you.
I do, in regards to just kind of outreach and signage, would any information that's being shared, would it be in multiple languages? Or at least you'll look at like East Boston and making sure that a lot of the information is translated in Spanish and English, looking at different parts of the city, and based on the cultural languages that are spoken in these areas where these parks are located, would you be doing translation of these signs too?
We will be. That has become a large priority for our department. We were able to spend $14,000 this year in translation services through the Language Acquisition Office. So something we hope to continue, and we are specifically looking at if it's an area that has a heavy Spanish speaking or Cape Verdean speaking or Portuguese speaking, that we include those languages in that neighborhood.
Thank you, thank you. And one thing that I always talk about in every hearing that I am is that there are some people who may not read and write even in their own native language. And so just in terms of the cultural competency piece of just making sure that there's visuals to kind of help folks understand those warnings, it would just a recommendation that I would make in terms of just the communication piece of it. So just something for you to ponder on and think about. And then I'm curious, and this is gonna, and I don't know, this is weird, but I'm gonna ask anyways. It's about our our sprinklers. You know, there's some parks across the city that I see that we have water sprinklers, but some of them are not fully functioning or working. Just wondering, does that fall under your jurisdiction, like the water sprinklers too?
It does. So as long as they're in a city park, those water splay decks and spray play, that is ours. They're, you know, we want to always make sure they're working, especially in this heat in the summer, to make sure we have cooling opportunities for families that may not have that in their homes. We have had glitches. A lot of the companies went to computer chips. So they are run by computer chips to turn on, to turn off, et cetera. And water and computer chips, as you can imagine, don't always mix. So I think they're going back to a lot of the old ways. So we are playing a cat and mouse game a lot, trying to fix our water features.
Okay, and I know that, and I have learned through my process on this journey that district counselors are advocating for their own, and I really do appreciate the process. But I'm going to just I'm at large. But as someone who lives around this park, I feel like I could talk a little bit about one particular park that I go to with my daughter, and I hope Councilor Campbell doesn't think that I'm overstepping my boundaries, but it is the park that and I'm not sure if it's a city park, so this might not fall under your jurisdiction. It's on the corner of Theodore and Evans. I don't know how to pronounce it. It begins with a T. Theodore and Evans Park.
It's Thetford Evans.
Oh, Thetford Evans, yeah.
Thank you. English is my second language, y'all, okay? That and Evans, the corner, I think that's the name of the park. Is that a city park? Is that one of our?
It is.
Okay. I see that that's under construction, and I'm happy to see, but I'm wondering if those water sprinklers are gonna be working. Is that park gonna have water sprinklers when it's redesigned?
Sure, I'm going to let Liza jump in because she'll have more of the specifics on it. Liza, if you don't mind.
Yes, there will be spray play there when it reopens, but it will be under construction for a chunk of the summer. Well, it's not going to open for another 2 to 3 months. We have more construction to do, but if possible, there should be some time towards the end of the summer where water play could be usable if that's appropriate in terms of social distancing.
I'm using my privilege here to advocate for my own daughter here. And then the last question.
That's all right. Counselor, just so you know, Liza's being very humble there. Liza introduced an equity assessment into the park's capital plan a few years back to make sure that neighborhood parks get redone, not just because there's a whole bunch of city councilors and other people advocating for them, but because they deserve to be done and they serve a community. And that's one of those parks that benefited from Liza's assessment.
Well, I have to say, Liza, I really do appreciate your advocacy, and so does everyone around my way. So thank you. And then I'm on a roll here, y'all. So I don't see the gavel. I'm just curious about, and I forgot where I was going with my questioning, but what were you saying, Commissioner Woods, beforehand? Because I think it was something that I was going to say. You were just talking about the park. Oh, no, I got it. I remember. It has nothing to do with what you were talking about. It's specifically around public safety and not just around needles. I know that's a big issue, but I'm just worried about just certain parks that our kids don't feel safe playing in. Do you guys work in collaboration with the police department to figure out how we can make some of our parks more safer?
We do, and we try to specifically increase our programming, which will be a challenge this summer, I think at least at the beginning of the summer. We're trying to promote the more positive programming that happens in a park will push away that negative activity and behavior. So especially now, it's more important than ever that we're engaged with Boston Police on issues in our public open space, because they should be open and safe and welcoming for all residents. So it's a problem if people don't feel welcome in their neighborhood park, and that's something that we have to continue to partner to change.
Well, I'm willing to help with that, so bring you on board, and I hear my time is up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mejia. All right, now it's Councilor Edwards.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to, so going deeper into my district, I wanted to know specifically about the flower beds on Bennington Street. the last year we were able to get and funding to help, and they did an amazing job seeing them out there, putting in plants. It was wonderful. I'm just wondering what we're going to do this year, what the plan is, and how we're going to have that. I know Suffolk University uses our stadium a great deal in East Boston, and I'm curious about how much money they're giving to the city to utilize that field. And Mary Ellen Welsh, the Greenway. Mariano, you know, it was great to be at the ribbon cutting. It was sad that we lost a giant in advocacy, but curious about, I think we're getting $400,000 or some sort of line item for that park, and what we're doing with the caboose specifically to liven up that area. If we were looking at porta potties or something in the Greenway. That's on East Boston. I can just quickly go into other parks, just if I can get some updates on I think it's Edwards Park in Charlestown. There was a ribbon cutting. We had all this capital investment or plan to do capital investment. And I brought up before the kitchen cup court, or the court, the smaller one. It was a little uneven and cracked, if there's any investment in that. Thank you. You already brought up the Ryan Park, so I won't go into that. For the North End, we were looking at Forester Street Park, repaving and general maintenance, that park/parking lot, and trying to work on that. And then, of course, the tree canopy. Is there a program looking at downtown for tree canopies? And I know that there's certainly, I mean, it would help a great deal in terms of the heat during the summer.
Sure. So I'll try to go through them one at a time here. So absolutely that you will see Bennington Street planted this year. I think, especially now than ever, when people are getting outside, adding some plants and beautiful flowers along that stretch is much needed. So we will be doing that. In terms of Suffolk University, they do pay $100,000 a year towards the Parks Department, as well as have other stuff in the agreement, whereas they give a full scholarship to a resident of East Boston High School, or student, I should say, from East Boston High School, as well as they're required to do so much programs inside. I don't know if it's elementary school levels, but it's definitely at the high school with their athletic teams to give the proper support and training and things like that. So that's all part of that agreement. In terms of the East Boston Greenway, the line item is for comprehensive park improvements for sea level rise mitigation, stormwater management upgrades, and improvements to pathways. So that is what you will, the work that we'll be doing specifically on the Mary Ellen Welsh Greenway. Hopefully fixing up a couple of the murals as well. I know that came in, that some of them got rusted. So we'll be able to do some work. The mural crew does fall underneath our department now. So we will work with Heidi and our team to try to fix those up. In terms of the caboose, we've had a couple interested parties. I think one was a coffee shop, another one was an ice cream vendor, as some exciting ideas that could go in there. I think one of the challenges is there's no electricity to the caboose whatsoever. So in writing that RFP, we have to make sure we put out there that it doesn't come with the electrical, et cetera, setup. So we'd have to include that in there. And I don't know if that would be as advantageous to people without the electricity, but something
Could you just make it a solar caboose?
Yeah, something to look into. Yeah, my only thing is if it's an ice cream machines, things like that, I have no idea what that draws in terms of electricity or things of that nature, but happy to look into it. Solar panels, definitely. Edwards Park is, right now, Edwards McCarthy is due for a fall renovation that was, we hoped to do earlier. We made sure with the Kitchen Cup folks we would not be in their way during their annual celebration to make sure they can still have their tournament take place, pending they can with social distancing at that time. And we will definitely look into the cracks because that was not on our radar, so we'll make sure we do that. I know Foster Street Playground, or Foster Street Parking Lot, as you mentioned, in North End. We did do a couple patchwork jobs there. I don't think there's anything in a line item at all for any extra pavement, but we can look into that if it's something we have to do through our General Park Improvements Fund. If we have to make safe some areas, happy to send a crew out to look at that. And in terms of the tree canopy for downtown, I think that will be included, especially in our urban forestry master plan, as we look at potential locations and the need for trees. And I would encourage anyone that lives in the downtown area, if they see a spot that they think would be suitable for a tree, to send it into 311 so our urban forestry tree can go out there, inspect it, make sure it's within the guidelines for planting a tree, and we could increase the canopy downtown.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Great. Thank you so much, Councillor Edwards. Before I do my questions, I just want to note for colleagues that I'm after this planning to go to public testimony. So if you have a burning question, please raise your blue hand. Otherwise, we'll go straight there once I finish my questions. And thank you again to the chief and the commissioner and the whole team. I know it's been a long day. I wanted firstly just to land back, Commissioner, for a second on the youth plans for the summer, and specifically the youth jobs plans. I mean, you referenced it a little bit, but it just feels like, I mean, I know it's so hard for all of us to come up with plans that that are going to be safe right now, but at the same time, like, we know it's not safe for our young people to not have anything to do. And of course, there's financial needs for youth jobs. There's you know, youth development, human development needs, and it does seem like, compared to other things, the outdoors is a great place to have young people be this summer. So I would just love to hear a little bit more about kind of the plans for how to engage them this summer at parks.
Sure. So as you probably can imagine, we have about 300 youth every summer that are employed by the Boston Parks Department, helping with sports programming, helping with music and arts programming, and we're going to have to look at that a different way this summer. With the golf courses being open, we're still likely able to have the Caddy Scholar program take place, probably a little smaller numbers, but we'll still be able to educate and train youth at the golf courses in smaller numbers out there, so that's one opportunity. We are looking at doubling our mural crew from 15 to 30 to have 2 separate mural crews that travel throughout the 6 to 7 weeks of summer to help beautify some spaces throughout the city. And if anybody has any recommendations of areas that could be suitable, we're always looking for new spots to add a little splash of color. In addition to that, I mentioned we're coming back with some sort of a cleaning crew, with the spring being off limits to a lot of these cleanups. Now more than ever, a lot of urban wilds or areas in parks that we don't regularly get to clean, or just get a 1 or 2 times a year cleaning, such as like some woodland areas. We're looking at trying to get up to 500 youth hired between Public Works and Parks to spread through the city in every single neighborhood. I don't necessarily think they'll be able to have power tools with some of these youth, but we may be going back to the old-fashioned golf club weed whackers and hedge cutters and just making sure paper pickers, et cetera, to beautify these spaces. This program existed in the 80s and 90s for a lot of vacant lots. I don't think as many vacant lots exist anymore. However, we're trying to change that and be adaptive to add that into our parks, our urban wilds, our dead-end streets, add more hokey-type cleanup along roadways. So ways to make sure that youth are employed, they're kept busy during the summer, and they have some income coming into their pockets.
Great. And yeah, no, I just think if we can have more youth jobs this summer rather than less, and it's so hard because we're backfilling for jobs that we can't do the normal way, but whatever you can do. And then I just think that, you know, I would love to see us thinking creatively, and I realize this is a little bit harder to set up instantly, but about kind of like, you know, if I would like to think that we're at a vaccine and we're at some kind of world that's a little more normal come next summer, but it seems like planning makes a lot of sense. And I wonder if we could be doing more robust outdoor education programs in kind of small groups. I wonder if we should be actually setting up a camp in Mary Cummings Park again and doing, you know, camping out there. This, for those watching at home, is a park that we mysteriously own out on in Burlington and Woburn, meant to be for exposing our kids to the great outdoors. Don't get much use of it for the city. Yeah, so I would love to. It seems to me like small groups that are a consistent group that do something outside, whether it's camping, sailing, et cetera. I mean, these seems like the things that we might want to be investing in.
Yeah, 100% I agree with you. I mean, we have the perfect outdoor classrooms, so it only makes sense to start utilizing this.
Counselor, just so you know, the city is in the process of a very lengthy, complicated process of working through the trust office and the trustees of reservations to activate that Mary Cummings space again for Boston urban youth. So it's a pretty exciting prospect, and happy to send along details.
I would love that. I have in fact gone out to the park just to see it. I have flown kites there, and it's an amazing space, and it would be great to, it's sort of, I know that we've also made efforts in the past to monetize it, but I think absent the ability to do that, you know, thinking about how we actually let it be a sort of space away from the city that opens up our young people's idea of the outdoors is a great use. So that's good to hear. I'll make a couple really quick comments, just that I hope, you know, I know we're gonna double our tree plantings, right? And then we're gonna have like half the time to do them. So just sort of, you know, curious about how we're thinking about having the operational capacity to, you know, triple or quadruple our tree planting schedule to make up for the time we're losing right now, Commissioner.
So we will see this fall will be very busy because it will be taking on what was going to be the fall planting as well as this spring planting. So it'll be very busy. And then going into next spring, we're going to see probably the start of this 2,000 trees going into implementation. And that's a new contract that will be going out there to ensure that not only the 2,000 trees are planted, there is a watering schedule and there is a warranty checks. And we're hopeful with this addition of an additional arborist, they'll be able to better monitor this process, and we can do these checks to make sure that companies aren't just planting the tree and walking away without watering it and hoping that in 2 years it survived without watering, that we can actually do more of these spot checks to ensure that the warranties are, the watering has happened under the warranty.
Great. And you mentioned having the extra water bike for some youth organization. I mean, is there a reason we can't be employing youth this summer to water trees and to check on the warranties? I mean, is that a potential at scale youth activity?
I think we can, and we partner right now with Speak for the Trees. I know David will probably be testifying later, and work with them as they take on specific neighborhoods, and they are funded through the city through the DYEE program with summer youth. So it could be something we can expand on where it's not only identifying spots, it could be watering as well, and provide that bike to someone like them, and our urban forestry team could jump on to be supportive to them. Great suggestion.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that the Speak for the Trees program is amazing, and certainly I hope that David is thinking about whether there's a way to scale it up at all. But I think also that piece of tree maintenance and support could be a good role for our young people, and one that, as Councilor Edwards mentioned, Noah's already been doing. And then my last couple of quick comments, because I don't have time for more questions. I'm thrilled to see, you know, investments in the Clarendon Street Playground going forward and in the Mission Hill Playground. Those are both really important spaces for families in my district. You know, definitely think that a number of councilors mentioned it. I think getting that dedicated line item for the mounted unit would help with people. I think a lot of what we hear from constituents is just an uncertainty about what money is there and whether it's at risk. And I hear you, Commissioner, saying, look, it's not at risk, like we love them. But I think, you know, just kind of helping break that out in a budget clarity way that would let people have that peace of mind about this really valued unit would be great. And then I'll just say, based on a conversation we had a little while ago, that I know I hear a lot in my district about an interest in taking the tar out of asphalted over tree pits. And it seems like that's something you all are totally open to, as long as the abutter for the pit is open to it. And so I think looking for some slightly more standard process or some way of publicizing for people that if they really are disappointed that all the pits on their block are tarred over, that that they really can express to the city, hey, we'd love to see these reoccupied, because I think folks don't know that that's the case.
Yeah, and I'm happy to be strategic about that and find ways that we can make it easier for them to let us know about those pits. I do worry if some of them are within ADA guidelines, because I think some were grandfathered in with the size of the sidewalks, especially in Beacon Hill, and if that's a concern. So we'd have to look at them all on a case-by-case basis, but that's my guess is why some of them may have been tarred over.
Yeah, well, you know, we're all about a shared streets approach on Beacon Hill, so you know, I think we can get there with this. Anyways, all right, that's me. And now I will just check. I don't see any blue hands raised, so we've got a number of members of the public and representatives of some of our important parks advocate organizations who have been waiting patiently. So I'm going to start admitting those folks now. First up, one second. So the first three on my list I'll just get them all admitted. All right, so first up is Liz Visa from the Friends of the Public Garden and also the Boston Parks Advocates. Liz, go ahead. You have to unmute yourself though. 1 second.
How's that?
Perfect.
Well, I want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak on behalf of this important department, Parks and Recreation, and their best fiscal 21 budget. I am Liz Visa, Executive Director of the Friends of the Public Garden, and we work in partnership with the city to care for and advocate for the Boston Common, the Public Garden, and Commonwealth Avenue Mall. This year, we recognize half a century of this work by signing a formal partnership plan with the city, which was very exciting. It will strengthen our already important partnerships with the Parks Department as we move forward to care for these iconic downtown parks. These 3 parks are neighborhood parks for over 55,000 people in 5 neighborhoods, but they are more than neighborhood parks. They are used intensively by residents in every neighborhood of Boston and beyond the country. They see over 7 million people visiting them annually. The Friends invests over $1.5 million directly into parks care every year, but it's critical that private support not be seen as a rationale to not adequately fund our partner, the Parks Department. And I've heard several of you say this, so I will be repeating what I have felt that in my lifetime, the vital role that parks play in the physical, social, and emotional life of our community and each member of this community has never been important. It is so clear that parks are not amenities, they are necessities. And as every other piece of the civic infrastructure of our city has shut down, our parks are open, free, and available to all. And I like hearing all these questions from each of you. How can we get people back out there? How can we get youth back out there? Certainly the Parks Department is trying to think thoughtfully about that and how can we carefully bring people out, but it's great for you to be asking those questions. So as Chairman Bach has said, I'm also speaking as a member of Boston Park Advocates on the steering committee, a really important voice for all of our parks, for the entire city. And while capital projects for our city's parks are always well received, without maintenance support, those investments cannot be sustained. And every year you have heard this from the Parks Advocacy community. So therefore we're thrilled that the mayor's budget this year has recommended significantly increased resources for operations. It is really great to see the addition of 4 staff positions for the second maintenance crew out in Franklin Park, incredibly important. And given the importance of our urban natural systems, it's heartening to see an additional staff person to support the work of the Urban Wilds program, which sits on the very capable shoulders of only 1 person right now. So it's really important that Paul Sutton get another person to be able to expand the capacity of what he does so well. And again, singing to the choir, we are very happy and wholeheartedly support the addition of funding to double the ability to have trees in our city. And also have another tree crew member. I mean, they really do need capacity, but as we all know, trees play a vital role in the beauty and environmental health of our city and its residents. We applaud the inclusion of funding for renovation to the block of Commonwealth Avenue Mall, known as Kenmore Mall, in the heart of Kenmore Square. This park serves a growing neighborhood, including many seniors as well as students, and is in great need of improvements. As Liza mentioned, over the past 2 years, the Friends has funded a master plan, and the funding proposed to come from the city will be critical in moving this project forward to construction. And this project is a wonderful example of the partnership that the Friends and the Parks Departments enjoy. Working together, we can make these improvements a reality, and we really urge you to support this project. We've also been working with the Parks Department, as you heard, on the master plan for Boston Common, reimagining our first in the country park. And it has been a robust collaborative process, including input from over 6,000 community members. As Liza mentioned, we've had many pop-ups all throughout the city. We are all challenged by how to continue this public process within the life of COVID-19, but we are committed to seeing how we can bring those voices of the community together and not stop this project. So we're looking forward to seeing how we can do that. We're very pleased to see $1.5 million in the budget to continue this project and move towards early action work that come out of the plan. The mayor's budget for the Parks and Recreation Department reflects the critical needs of our parks and for every resident of Boston who seeks them for respite and recreation. We urge the City Council to look favorably on this proposed budget. And thank you so much for the opportunity to testify.
Great. Thank you so much, Liz, and for all of your work.
You're welcome.
Next up, Karen Monty Brodek from the Emerald Necklace Conservancy. Karen?
Great. Unmute. Hi, my name is Karen Monty Brodek. I'm the president of the Emerald Necklace Conservancy. I'm really happy to be here today. And I know that people have mentioned this before, but I just want to say I've been really, really moved and impressed by the amazing team, city workers of all stripes, but the Parks Department staff have been out there picking up garbage right now, doing those incredibly important things that I think a lot of folks appreciate. They've been doing it day in, day out, and now they're doing it under, I think, very, very complicated conditions. And I just want to say how incredibly grateful the Emerald Necklace Conservancy and all of the park users are to their work right now. I think it is important that people are starting to even more understand the importance of the Emerald Necklace, understand the importance of open space, understand the importance of additional space throughout our city where we can provide that today. And my sister is an herbalist and she works with homeless populations. And one of the things that we've been talking a lot about as we both reflect on our days these days is that there is no cure for COVID. All we can do is try and improve our immune systems and try and be as healthy as we can be. And I think parks and natural spaces, we now know, is one of those things that can help. I really want to applaud the many things that are in this budget this year, particularly the record capital investments that are in this program, both of past years in Franklin Park, the pathways that are being heavily used today in Jamaica Pond that the mayor had invested in and this team has invested in years past. Very excited about the upcoming investments and the improvement in the Back Bay Fens. I also really think that as I already stated in my letter, so I'm not going to repeat everything I said in my letter, but I think the improvements to adding a swing shift, a night shift, so there's more people able to respond to upcoming and urgent needs is great. And I also really, really appreciate the increased focus in this budget that is focusing on urban trees in a way that perhaps we haven't been able to do in the past. I think one of the things that I'm really, really proud of with the Emerald Necklace Conservancy's work is that we have a shared master plan for all of the trees in GIS that we use with DCR, City of Boston, and Brookline. And so I'm hoping that those kinds of things, that kind of management can be expanded as this urban forestry plan comes about. And I really hope that it does, and it remains in the budget, because I think that is incredibly important. I also really appreciate the way that the department is focusing on areas which lack canopy. I mean, I think that is, a reality. We know there's some parts of the cities that have more trees, some parts that have less. Really, really proud of the partnership that we have in the Emerald Necklace and how we're able to track every tree. But other parts of the city doesn't have that level of investment. So I think it's really great that this is an opportunity to expand that. I think more trees planted are fantastic. I'm glad that I was able to partner with Speak for the Trees and others to hand out trees recently. I do really share the concern that Councillor Bach and others are talking about in terms of the summer and in terms of providing programs. We work with the city through the Department of Youth and Families to provide summer programs and hire students that work in the parks. And we're really trying to figure out how we could do that safely, and we don't feel like we have guidance yet on that. So I'm really hopeful that shortly something would come out. We're also trying to see if perhaps we could shift our programs to something virtual. I don't know how many kids want to be in front of a computer all summer, but if perhaps we can do some things virtual and then some things outside, we really do want to try and do something safe. But I think that's and that's the challenge. I do think that I really applaud the hiring and diversity practices that have been talked about today. And, I think one thing over the next few weeks, I hope that we can partner on is how we could take spaces that are underutilized between our systems. If we could better connect potentially the Emerald Necklace and the Southwest Corridor, and then areas that aren't necessarily directly beside a park, where we know we're seeing more, poor health outcomes, are there ways that we can make new corridors? And I'm very excited that there was a hearing yesterday about that. I think the Emerald Necklace provides some of those ideas. I think there are still ways we could make the Emerald Necklace better and bigger and provide more spaces within that. The Emerald Necklace is 1,100 acres, and if you remove the water, because not everyone can walk on water like Jesus, you remove the water and then divide it by a 6-foot space, you can fit 380,000 Bostonians in the Emerald Necklace. So we can spread people out. We just have to do that, and we have to communicate about that. And I know it's a challenge because not everyone likes to listen all the time to signs, etc. We have been putting out signs that are graphic as much as possible because we know that we have a lot of languages to work with. And I'm probably at time here, 2 minutes.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited about this budget and trying to continue to build on the things that this group has started. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Karen. All right, next up, David Mishulam, and then Caroline. David from Speak for the Trees. You have the floor.
Thank you. And Matt, I just want you to admire the trees behind me here. Thank you all. A pleasure to be here and to see so many wonderful, friendly faces, people that I miss and hold dear. And I wanted to especially thank Ryan Woods and the Parks Department for their continued commitment and hard work during these trying times. Having accessible parks that remain safe and clean is really critical, I think, and we all can appreciate them, especially on beautiful days like today. My name is David Meshulam. I am Executive Director and co-founder of Speak for the Trees, a community and urban forestry nonprofit here in Boston. And I thank you for the opportunity to share some thoughts with you. In addition to the comments I'm about to share, I submitted to all the city councilors last night a letter of support signed by 25 organizations and over 70 individuals, asking that you approve the administration's request for $500,000 for a master plan, as well as $1 million for increased tree planting and care. I'd like to make a few brief remarks on the importance of our urban forests, as well as 4 criteria that Speak for the Trees believes the urban master plan should include. So first, trees are vitally important to build healthy and resilient communities, especially in the face of the twin challenges of climate change and COVID-19. By sequestering pollutants, cooling our air, filtering stormwater, and providing mental respite, our urban trees do so much in ensuring the economic, social, mental, and environmental health of Boston's residents. Even as we sit here today, we see how inequities in our urban infrastructure are playing out and how gaps in our tree canopy can carry grave health implications. For example, residents who live in areas with higher amounts of air pollution are at increased health risks from COVID-19. Our climate crisis has too exposed similar risks as certain neighborhoods face the burden of hotter summers and increased flooding. Which brings me to my second point. At Speak for the Trees, we believe that Boston's urban forestry master plan must be guided by the principles of tree equity, which I had the pleasure of speaking to the City Council about 2 years ago. Tree equity is the idea that there are disparities in our tree canopy coverage that often track along economic, racial, historical, and social lines. Low-income neighborhoods tend to have less tree canopy than more affluent ones. So in order to meet the call of tree equity, and I hope you share with me in that call, and to ensure the success of the administration's urban forestry master plan, we believe that the following 4 core values guide the plan. First, the plan must be holistic, or rather, it should see the forest for the trees. Instead of just being made up of a collection of trees, our forest needs to be thought of as a system that works together to support wildlife, provide ecological and environmental benefits, and bring people together. Trees rely on each other and on us for mutual support. Second, the plan must be comprehensive. It needs to take into account the range of spaces and organizations and needs to bring them together to explore their role in this work. This includes private and public organizations, state, city, and federal agencies, schools, and residents. Any plan should take into account more than just city-owned trees. Third, it must be community-driven. Urban trees carry the largest health benefits in the areas where they are rooted physically. The work of the plan needs to meet people in the spaces where they live and breathe. As such, it must acknowledge and respond to differences of geography, class, race, and experiences, and welcome a variety of opinions and voices. And finally, the plan must be informed by data. Boston is a city filled with brain and computing power. The plan should work closely with leading researchers in the field to create a plan that is guided by the best data and science available. The mayor's request is critical to building a long-term, vibrant urban forest, but in order to fully succeed, it needs to be both holistic and comprehensive, community-rich, and data-rich. We ask that you support this plan to provide guidance, metrics, and benchmarks that allow city agencies, developers, NGOs such as ours and our partners, and residents to work together for planning and building an urban forest for the future. We at Speak for the Trees look forward to working together with the Parks Department to develop a long-term plan that ensures the preservation and growth of our urban forest. Our trees, all of them, are an invaluable asset. So thank you for your time, and I yield to Chair.
Thank you, David. Really appreciate your work. All right, next up is Caroline Reeves, and then it'll be Sonia Tengblad. Caroline.
Hi, I'm Caroline Reeves. I'm the co-founder of the Muddy Water Initiative with the incredible Jackie Royce. Thank you, Chair Bach and councilors, for giving us the chance to be heard today. It's been very exciting to hear the broad sweep of the city's plans. I've been listening since 10 o'clock this morning. But we know that what actually gets done is a sum of small actions with the buy-in of our communities. The Muddy Water Initiative is a grassroots environmental action and advocacy group committed to cleaning up the Muddy River, which flows through the heart of our city, the string on which the Emerald Necklace is strung. The Muddy Water Initiative is suggesting 2 small-scale pilot programs with big potential that we hope will be ultimately adopted across the city to preserve our wetlands and to engage all our neighbors from the Fenway to the Back Bay and all the way to our harbor in cleaning up one of our most precious environmental resources, our waterways. We submitted a proposal, which I hope that you've taken a look at, and as you can see from this, we're suggesting 2 boom systems to string across the Muddy River. One to scoop the trash off the surface of the river, and the second to deploy an innovative and exciting new activated charcoal filter system, which will filter phosphorus, hydrocarbons, and E. coli out of the Muddy, a river which the Charles River Watershed Association calls one of the top 2 most polluted tributaries of the Charles River. For our first project, the Water Goat trash removal boom, we're also asking the city for funds to hire an intern to oversee the volunteers we're gathering to clean up our Muddy's trash. We're hoping to engage our urban youth throughout the summer, clean up the river's trash, to test the muddy water, and to help us research how to better care for our green and blue resources. The Muddy Water Initiative is a get-it-done group which is looking forward to partnering with the city to improve our public health infrastructure, which includes cleaning up our urban waterways in innovative, inclusive, financially accessible projects. Thank you, Madam Chair, councilors, Chief Cook, Commissioner Woods, for all you do to help us green and blue our city. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Carolyn. All right, next up, it'll be Sonia, and then I'll just ask, and then it'll be Sarah Freeman, and I would just ask the other attendees who are here, you're not on my testimony list, but we're happy to recognize you if you would just raise your blue hands or make a comment in the chat so I know that you want to testify and not just watch the hearing. Sonia's up next, and then Sarah. Sonia.
All right, well, thank you, everybody. I'm Sonia Tamblatt. I'm the coordinator of the East Boston Mothers Out Front team. And so many of you are collaborators with Mothers Out Front, so I thank you for that. Councilor Edwards has been a major supporter for our air quality campaign in East Boston, so I thank you all. I wanted to voice my support from an East Boston perspective for funding urban forestry as aggressively as we possibly can as a public health asset. A viewpoint I know many of you on this call share, and I'm very grateful for that. When my team met with Mayor Walsh about our East Boston air quality campaign, I was grateful to Commissioner Cook, who quickly added that we have the lowest tree canopy in all of Greater Boston. We arguably should have one of the highest. With one of the highest populations of children who have a 360% greater chance of experiencing childhood asthma symptoms, our children deserve the many health, safety, behavioral, and academic benefits that trees provide, and I know I don't need to spell them out for this crowd. But if there has ever been a time to illustrate the immediacy of this issue for Eastie residents at large, it's been the last 2 months. We have one of the highest populations of essential workers, and simultaneously, increased rates of asthma, cardiovascular disease, and doubled COPD rates, diseases that put them more at risk of the deadly implications of both COVID-19 and higher temperatures alike. Trees are not only one of the most cost-effective and efficient ways we can combat heat island effect, but a way to minimize the implications of these very diseases themselves. But simply planting trees, more trees, isn't the entire answer, although it's a huge one. Of course, there's the issue of gas leaks, but beyond that, carefully planned locations of trees in our neighborhood is crucial so that they can not only filter air pollution, but survive it. We also need to carefully consider tree species that don't emit high volumes of VOCs. The need for a multilingual engagement process is necessary as we have the highest population of limited English proficiency, and with 53% of us renting, dialogue and education amongst all parties is crucial. Because of the complexity of our situation, I'd venture to say we need our own arborist and tree warden. So thank you for investing in this as aggressively as you possibly can as a way to protect our communities, our kids, and our essential workers for decades to come. And I wanted to add that you mentioned the need for more youth or support to plant these 2,000 trees. And I know a lot of moms with a lot of kids looking for a lot of things to do right now. So put us and our kids to work. We'd love to be partners.
Great. Thank you so much, Sonia. And thanks to Mothers Out Front for all your work. All right. Next up is Sarah. And then I'll just say one more time to Celeste, Claire, Soleil, Genevieve, Joanne, and Michelle, who are all in the waiting room. Just if any of you want to testify, if you could raise your blue hands or respond to the chat. Otherwise, Sarah's going to be our last instance of public testimony. Sarah, you have the floor.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Freeman, Jamaica Plain, and Arbor Way Coalition, which is the part of the Emerald Necklace beyond Jamaica Pond and onto the Arboretum and Franklin Park. We're also a member of the Park Overseers for the Emerald Necklace Conservancy. And as such, I'll be brief, saying we support what was in their letter. We've written our own letter. So without going into detail, the second maintenance shift, trees, the rangers, the sharps, those are the big items. I can say the one less feel-good part of the letters is the park rangers. We love them, and I appreciate Councilor Bach and others referring to peace of mind to see some numbers in the operating budget. It's more like post-traumatic stress for those of us who remember a time that the unit was on the brink of elimination. And it's wonderful to hear Commissioner Woods say they're not going away. But it would be so much better to see what numbers are there, what do the friends need to fundraise for some stress reduction. And on a personal note, I will just add that things that came up during the hearing, I'm so happy to hear that the expanded recycling, the Back Bay fence paths, all the urban wild stuff, the geese. The city has been fabulous in keeping the parks open during this pandemic, and the budget by valuing the parks and keeping them at a level that they'll be welcoming and safe places for public health, mental health, environment, climate. I don't mean to sound like I'm complaining about the areas for improvement. There's a lot to like, but it would be great to clarify that Rangers part. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Sarah. And thank you also. Genevieve is not testifying, but just notes that she's submitted a letter on behalf of the Fenway Alliance in support of the Boston Parks Department budget, which I know, Genevieve, we have and will be included in testimony related to this hearing. I want to thank all the members of the public for testifying, everyone who's been watching from home, my fellow counselors for their many good questions, and especially Commissioner Woods, Chief Cook, and the whole parks team for just like all your dedicated answers to our questions today, and more importantly, your dedicated work every day of the year. So I think with that, we are ready to adjourn. This meeting of the Boston City Council is now adjourned. Everyone go enjoy a couple more hours of sunshine in a safe and socially distant way. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody. It was good to see everyone's faces.
Thanks, everybody. Be well.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye, Parky.